You're seriously asking for a hall pass to cheat on me, Kyle? I leaned against the kitchen counter, clutching my coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping me from exploding. Kyle glanced up from his cereal, unbothered. Yes, Macy. Honesty is crucial. You love my transparency, right? Flabbergasted, I stared at him, trying to find the right words. Do what you want, Kyle, but remember, actions have consequences. I looked away, my gaze drifting to the suburban tranquility outside our window. The peaceful setting felt like a cruel mockery of the chaos in my heart. My thoughts were interrupted when he spoke again, far too casually. You spent $1,200 on a night out? What were you thinking? I could hear the disbelief in my own voice. My client wanted to go. I had to be honest and tell you. Isn't that what matters? Kyle's voice held that sickeningly logical tone he always used when justifying his outrageous behavior. I slammed my mug on the counter, coffee sloshing over the edge. Your honesty doesn't make it okay, Kyle? Do you understand how hard I work to balance our budget? He shrugged, not even looking up. You'll figure it out. You always do. Anger bubbled up inside me. I stepped closer. Kyle, you're so wrapped up in yourself. We're on the brink, and you're pushing us further away each day. Kyle finally met my eyes, his indifferent expression infuriating me further. I'm being truthful with you, Macy. Isn't that what we agreed on when we got married? His words hit me like a ton of bricks, and I scoffed. Being honest doesn't give you a free pass to disrespect our marriage. Don't twist this. He went back to his cereal, mumbling something under his breath. I couldn't catch it, but I didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than words ever could. The phone buzzed in my pocket. It was Lisa, my best friend. Perfect timing. I turned away from Kyle and answered it. Hey, Lisa. Macy, you sound stressed. What's up? Lisa's comforting voice brought a momentary relief. I sighed. Kyle spent $1,200 at a strip club and thinks being honest about it makes it okay. There was a pause on Lisa's end. Then she sighed too. Macy, you deserve better than this. He's taking advantage of your kindness. A bitter laugh escaped me. He calls it honesty. I call it manipulation. Lisa didn't hesitate. You need to set boundaries, Macy, or he's going to keep walking all over you. I glanced back at Kyle, now fully engrossed in his phone, oblivious to the storm brewing around him. Yeah, Lisa, you're right. I need to do something. That night, as we prepared for bed, I turned to Kyle. Kyle, will you always be honest with me? He turned, a smirk on his face as if he was victorious in some twisted game. Of course, Macy. Always. I nodded, a resolve hardening inside me. It was time to take action. Macy, check this out. Kyle called from the living room. I entered to find him admiring a shiny new wristwatch. Another designer watch? Your third this year? I couldn't mask the frustration in my voice. It was on sale. The store clerk was so persuasive. You know I couldn't say no. He flashed a smile, thoroughly pleased with himself. Couldn't say no, I repeated, struggling to keep my composure. Kyle, we're trying to save for a down payment on a house. Do you understand that? Kyle rolled his eyes, waving off my concern. It's just a watch, Macy. You're blowing this out of proportion. No, Kyle, you are. You act like our budget doesn't matter. I'm tired of you treating our money like it's a bottomless pit. He shrugged, dismissively. What's the big deal? We'll bounce back? We always do. I felt my patience snapping. We? Do you hear what you're saying? I am the one fixing your messes while you keep digging us deeper. Kyle's expression hardened. Don't get all high and mighty, Macy. I earn my keep, too. Sure, and then you blow it on toys like this new watch. I turned away, my mind racing with how to manage yet another financial blunder caused by his careless spending. Later that evening, I met Lisa at our favorite coffee shop. She was already sitting at a corner table, her expression a mix of concern and curiosity. You looked like you needed a break, she said as I sat down. You have no idea, I sighed, dropping my purse onto the table. Kyle bought another expensive watch. No discussion, no thought about our finances. Just, oh look, shiny. Lisa frowned and leaned in. Macy, this isn't just about the watch, is it? No, it's about everything. He's making decisions like I'm not even here. And when I call him out, he just shrugs it off. I feel like I'm screaming into a void. I rubbed my temple, trying to fend off the impending headache. Lisa took my hand. You've been more than patient, Macy. But if he doesn't respect you or your marriage, you need to decide what's next. Her words hit home. I nodded slowly, feeling a new resolve take shape. You're right. I can't keep doing this. When I got home, Kyle was sprawled on the couch, engrossed in another mindless show. I stood in the doorway for a moment, watching him, feeling a mix of anger and sadness. He looked up briefly and grinned. Hey, Mace, come sit. You've got to see this episode. I shook my head, a strange calm washing over me. Maybe later, Kyle. I have some things to think about. As I climbed the stairs, I knew a confrontation loomed on the horizon. Kyle's actions were tearing us apart, and my patience was running thin. Lisa's words echoed in my mind. I need to decide what's next, and I knew that meant taking control before there was nothing left to salvage. Macy, I've got to talk to you about something, Kyle said one evening, his tone oddly serious. I set the laundry basket down and faced him. What is it now, Kyle? He scratched his head, avoiding my eyes. Jenna called. She needs to talk to me alone. Can I go? I felt my pulse quicken. Seriously, Kyle? You know what's going to happen. He sighed, playing the innocence card. Macy, it's just a talk. She's going through some stuff and needs a friend. A friend? I fumed. She's your ex-girlfriend. You know this isn't about being just a friend. He stepped closer, trying to look sincere. You always say honesty is important. I wanted to be upfront with you. I crossed my arms, feeling the weight of every compromised boundary. Fine, Kyle, go. But don't expect me to be okay with it. Kyle grabbed his jacket, the hint of a smirk on his face. Thanks, Macy. I'll be back soon. As the door closed behind him, an eerie calm filled the house. I sank into the couch, tension thrumming through my veins. It felt like a silent storm brewing, and I wasn't sure how much more I could take. I sat there, staring at the door for what seemed like hours. The silence felt like a judgment, reminding me of all the times I had given in, hoping things would get better. My phone buzzed. A text from Lisa. How's it going? I quickly typed back. He's gone to see Jenna. 2 minutes later, my phone rang. Macy, Lisa's voice was filled with concern. You let him go, I sighed heavily. I did. He played the honesty card again. Macy, this is getting out of hand. He's manipulating you because he knows you'll let it slide. I know, Lisa, but I just needed to see how far he'd go. There was a bitter edge to my voice. Then what's your plan? Lisa asked. I'm not sure yet. I admitted. But I'm not going to let him keep walking over me. I could hear the resolve in Lisa's voice. You need to draw the line, Macy. For good. When Kyle returned late that night, I was still on the couch. He hesitated in the door, probably expecting a barrage of questions. But I just looked at him, feeling a mix of disappointment and resignation. How's Jenna? I asked, unable to hide the sarcasm. He shrugged. She's better now. Just needed someone to listen. I nodded slowly, my anger barely contained. Glad to hear it. Kyle seemed to relax and moved to sit beside me, but I stood up before he could. I'm going to bed. We'll talk tomorrow. As I climbed the stairs, I could feel Kyle's confusion. I needed him to understand that his actions were eroding the foundation of our marriage. I was done playing by his rules. It was time to take control, before there was nothing left to save. A few nights later, I heard Kyle on the phone in the kitchen. His voice was low, but the house was silent enough that I could catch snippets of the conversation. I moved quietly, inching closer to hear better. Macy is so gullible. Kyle laughed softly into the phone. She lets me get away with everything. My heart pounded as I pressed myself against the wall. The voice on the other end, unmistakably Jenna's, responded, You really chose the perfect wife for your schemes. Rage bubbled up inside me, but I forced myself to stay hidden and silent. I needed to know how deep this betrayal went. Yeah, Kyle replied. She's a pushover. I can practically do anything, and she just takes it. Good for us, right? Jenna's tone was light, almost mocking. Kyle laughed again, that familiar coldness in his voice. Absolutely. Anyway, I've got to go. Talk later. I heard the click of the phone and the rustle of Kyle moving around. I slipped back into the living room, heart racing, but my face set in a calm mask. When Kyle wandered in a few moments later, he seemed unaware of my presence. Hey, you okay? He asked casually. Just thinking, I replied, my voice steady. How was your call? Kyle shrugged. Has nothing important, just catching up with an old friend. I nodded, swallowing my anger. Glad to hear it. That night, lying in bed next to him, my mind raced with possibilities. The betrayal cut deep, but it also fueled a new sense of determination. I wasn't going to let him and Jenna trample over me any longer. The next day, I made a plan. I started by quietly gathering evidence of Kyle's deceit. I documented his suspicious financial transactions, saved his shady text messages, and made notes of his questionable outings. The more I dug, the clearer the pattern became. One evening as we were having dinner, I looked across the table at Kyle. "Kyle, will you always be honest with me?" He met my gaze without flinching. "Of course, Macy, always." I forced a smile, hiding my true intentions. "Good, I'm counting on it." As Kyle continued eating, oblivious, I felt a grim satisfaction. I began reaching out to the key figures who needed to know the truth. First, I contacted his boss, Rick, then Jenna's husband, Tom. I wanted to ensure they saw Kyle for who he truly was. In the quiet of our home, my plan took shape. Every small detail fell into place, driven by the cold anger burning inside me. Kyle's carelessness and deceit had set the stage, and now it was my turn to act. The day of reckoning was coming, and I was ready to unveil the truth, no matter the cost. I glanced at Kyle, still engrossed in his meal. He had no idea what was coming, and that thought gave me strength. This was just the beginning. The fallout from his so-called honesty was about to crash down, and he wouldn't see it coming. The next few weeks were a blur as I meticulously collected evidence against Kyle. Every lie, every deceitful action, meticulously recorded and preserved. I enlisted Lisa's help to ensure I didn't miss a single detail. One evening, Kyle and I sat in the living room. He was busy with his phone while I pretended to read a book. I looked up and asked, "Kyle, what would you do if you found out I lied to you?" He chuckled, still staring at his screen. "Why would you even ask that? You're the honest one, remember?" I forced a laugh. "Just curious, since you value honesty so much." He shrugged. "We'd have to deal with it, I guess, but I trust you wouldn't lie." I nodded, my heart hardening. "Right. Well, honesty is important." Over the next few days, I quietly reached out to various people Kyle had fooled, gathering stories and evidence. Once I felt ready, I made a final plan with Lisa. The night before the big reveal, Kyle sat down next to me. "You seem distracted lately, Macy. Everything all right?" "Just work stress," I lied smoothly. "Nothing to worry about." He bought it, leaning back with a satisfied smile. "Good. Keep me posted if you need anything." I wished he understood how much I needed, but I kept my silence, knowing tomorrow would bring everything into the open. The following evening, I asked Kyle if we could host a small get-together. He agreed, probably thinking it would just be friends. As guests arrived, I could see the confusion on Kyle's face. Rick, his boss, entered first, followed by Jenna's husband, Tom. Kyle greeted them, but his unease was palpable. "Didn't expect to see you all here," he muttered, mostly to himself. As everyone settled in, I glanced at Lisa, who nodded subtly. I cleared my throat, feeling everyone's eyes on me. "Thank you all for coming. There are some things we need to discuss." Kyle shifted uncomfortably. "Macy, what's going on?" I took a deep breath. "Kyle, you've always valued honesty. Tonight we're going to be very honest with each other." Rick stepped forward, holding a folder. "Kyle, I need to talk to you about these expense reports. They don't add up. How do you explain the company funds spent at strip clubs?" Kyle paled, fumbling for words. I can explain. It's not what it looks like." Tom stood up, anger flashing in his eyes. "And what about Jenna? You've been sneaking around, lying to both of us. Care to explain that?" Kyle turned to me, desperation in his gaze. "Macy, what have you done?" I met his eyes, my voice steady. "Just keeping everything honest, Kyle. You taught me that, remember?" The room erupted in a flurry of accusations and denials. Kyle's facade crumbled before my eyes, and I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. Rick announced Kyle's termination for misconduct, sealing his fate. As the confrontation wound down, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Kyle's deceit had been exposed, and now it was time to move forward. Our life would never be the same, and for the first time in a long while, that prospect felt like freedom. Kyle paced the living room, a mixture of panic and anger in his eyes. "Macy, you betrayed me. How could you do this?" I stood my ground. "You betrayed our marriage long before I exposed the truth, Kyle." He ran his hands through his hair, frustration evident. "You've ruined everything. My job, my reputation. It's all gone." Rick, who was still there, shook his head. "Kyle, what's this I hear about you using company funds at strip clubs? Do you have any idea the kind of trouble you've put yourself and the company in?" Kyle's shoulders slumped. "Rick, I can explain. It was just one mistake." Rick's expression was stern. One mistake? This has been going on for months. You've been taking advantage of us all. Tom stepped forward, fury etched on his face. And you've been sleeping with my wife, Kyle. How do you explain that? Kyle turned to me, desperation and resentment mingling in his eyes. Macy, what have you done? I looked at him, feeling the weight of everything he had put me through lift as I said, just keeping everything honest, Kyle. Rick walked up to Kyle. You're terminated, effective immediately. We'll be conducting a full investigation. Kyle's face fell. Terminated, Rick, please, Tom interjected. And as for Jenna, we'll see if there's anything left to salvage. But know this, Kyle, you've wrecked our lives. Kyle turned back to me, hands trembling. We were fine. Why now? We were never fine, Kyle, I said quietly. I was surviving. Now I'm done. I had everyone's attention then, and it felt like a final exclamation point on a long sentence of deceit. Kyle's eyes filled with disbelief. Macy, you can't just walk away. I shook my head. I can and I will. I handed him a manila envelope containing the divorce papers. This is for you. It's time for both of us to move on. Kyle stood there, stunned. You can't mean this. I do, I said, my voice steady. And don't think you can talk your way out of it. This is happening. As the crowd dispersed, Tom and Rick gave me understanding nods. Lisa, who had stood by silently, finally stepped forward and hugged me. You did it, Macy. I nodded, the enormity of what had happened sinking in. Yes, I did. Kyle watched us from across the room, his world crumbling while I felt the first sense of peace I'd had in years. It's time to start over, I whispered to Lisa. And for the first time, those words didn't feel like a hollow promise. They felt like the beginning of a new chapter, one where honesty wasn't a weapon, but a foundation for something real. A few days after the dust settled, Kyle's life had dramatically changed. He lost his job, his reputation was in tatters, and his days were spent in a hazy blend of denial and anger. I, on the other hand, had already begun looking for a new place to stay. I needed a fresh start, away from the toxic remnants of our life together. One evening, Kyle confronted me as I packed my bags. Macy, why now? We were fine. We could have worked things out. I zipped up my suitcase with finality. We were never fine, Kyle. You were blind to everything wrong because you never felt the consequences of your actions. Kyle's face twisted with frustration. We were partners. Why did you have to ruin everything? I looked at him, calm and resolute. Partners? You used me, lied to me, disrespected me. That's not a partnership. Kyle swallowed hard, his voice dropping. I can change. We can fix this. I shook my head, feeling a bittersweet pity. It's too late, Kyle. This isn't about fixing us anymore. This is about me finding peace. He collapsed on the couch, head in his hands. I just don't get it. We had a good thing. I stood over him, feeling the finality of my decision. We never had a good thing, Kyle. I was just surviving. Now I'm moving on. As I left the house with my bags, I felt a sense of liberation. The night air was cool, and each step away from the house was a step toward my future. I moved into a small apartment downtown. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and it represented a new beginning. Lisa helped me settle in, her presence a comforting reminder that I wasn't alone. A few days later, I served Kyle the divorce papers. He looked at them, disbelief and defeat etched on his face. So this is it? Yes, I said simply. This is it. The legal proceedings moved swiftly. Kyle didn't have much of a fight left in him after the fallout. His personal and professional ruins were too much to bear, and he had no choice but to sign the papers. As the final signatures were placed, Kyle asked one last question. Are you happy now? I met his gaze without hesitation. No, but I'm getting there. I deserve someone who values me for who I am, not for what they can get away with. The courtroom was silent as I walked out, leaving behind the legalities and the broken pieces of a life that once seemed unshakable. Back at my apartment, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was the freedom to find it. The first step had been taken, and the path forward was mine to explore. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in years it was bright and full of possibilities. And that was enough, for now. As the weeks went by, the full weight of my actions came into focus. I had not only unmasked Kyle but also reinforced my own strength. News of Kyle's downfall spread through our town. At first I felt vindicated, but as time passed, I realized his isolation was also a consequence of my decisions. One evening, I received a call from Kyle. I hesitated, then answered. Hello, Macy, it's me, he said, his voice strained. What do you want, Kyle? I need to talk. Please, he replied, sounding genuinely broken. Curiosity got the better of me. Fine. Where? Can you meet me at our old place? He asked, almost pleading. I agreed reluctantly. As I drove to our former home, memories flooded my mind, the good and the bad all mixed together. When I arrived, Kyle was standing on the porch, looking like a shadow of his former self. Thanks for coming, he began, his voice hesitant. What do you want, Kyle? I asked, crossing my arms defensively. Just hear me out. I know I screwed up, big time, he admitted, his eyes avoiding mine. I've lost everything, Macy. My job, my reputation. No one wants anything to do with me. I felt a twinge of sadness, but reminded myself why we were here. Kyle, you brought this on yourself. You lied, cheated, and manipulated everyone around you. He nodded, tears welling up in his eyes. I know, and now I'm paying the price. Everyone has turned their back on me. I took a deep breath, grappling with my remaining feelings. You need to understand that actions have consequences. This isn't just about you being sorry. Kyle nodded, his voice cracked and desperate. I get it now. I really do. I wish I had understood before it all fell apart. I felt a pang of something, pity, maybe. Kyle, honesty can't just be a word you throw around. It has to mean something and be backed by actions. He looked at me, genuinely remorseful. I know, and I was too late to understand that. I'm sorry, Macy. There was a moment of silence as we stood on the porch, both absorbing the gravity of everything we had gone through. I hope you find a way to rebuild, Kyle, but it won't be with me, I said firmly. Kyle nodded, accepting my words. I understand. I turned to leave, feeling a sense of closure. As I drove away, the weight on my chest felt lighter. This chapter was coming to an end. When I reached my apartment, a sense of peace washed over me. Lisa called to check in. How did it go? It's over, Lisa. He finally understood, I replied, feeling the finality of my words. She sighed in relief. I'm proud of you, Macy. It's been a long road. Thanks, Lisa, I said, looking around my new place. I deserve someone who values me for who I am. That you do, my friend, she affirmed. As I hung up, I reflected on everything I had endured and overcome. It wasn't over, not by a long shot, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control of my life. And that, in itself, was a victory worth celebrating.
Have you ever felt invisible to the people who should see you most clearly? Your worth dismissed by those whose approval you once craved. Picture toiling in silence, building something extraordinary, only to have your family label you a failure until the moment you unveil a truth so staggering it redefines everything. That's my story. A tale of quiet triumphs and a revelation that shattered decades of misunderstanding. I'm Camilla Johnson, and I want to take you back to where it all began. To a childhood overshadowed by a family legacy I was never meant to claim. Before we dive in, let me know where you're listening from. And if this story resonates, hit that subscribe button. There's more to come. I'm 35 now, living in Chicago, where the skyline glitters with possibility and the hum of ambition fuels my days. But growing up in the North Shore suburbs, in a sprawling 5,000-square-foot house that felt more like a museum than a home, I was the outlier in the Johnson family portrait. My father, Richard Johnson, was the architect of Johnson Industries, an electrical components manufacturer he built from a single warehouse in 1990 into a mid-sized empire by the time I was born. To him, the company wasn't just a business. It was his identity, his true child. Every dinner conversation revolved around production quotas or supplier contracts, and every holiday was a stage for potential investors. My mother, Eleanor, played her role with grace, the impeccable homemaker who kept our lives polished while Dad poured his soul into the factory floor. Then there was my brother, David, 4 years my senior at 39, the golden heir groomed from childhood to inherit Dad's throne. From age 15, he shadowed Dad at the plant, absorbing the rhythm of machines and the weight of expectation. I, on the other hand, was the question mark. The daughter who didn't fit the mold. While Dad and David revered the tangible circuit boards, assembly lines, I was captivated by the invisible currents of finance, the systems that powered industries. Where they saw components, I saw capital flows and market inefficiencies. I didn't want to build things. I wanted to orchestrate the forces that made building possible. But to Dad, finance was a necessary evil, a game of paper pushing unfit for a Johnson. When I announced my plan to study finance at Northwestern, his sigh was heavy with disappointment, as if I'd chosen a path of frivolity over legacy. That moment planted a seed of resolve in me, a quiet vow to prove my worth, even if he couldn't see it. The Chicago skyline became my refuge, a constellation of glass and steel that mirrored the ambition I'd nurtured since leaving home at 18. I threw myself into my studies at Northwestern, graduating summa cum laude with a degree in finance. My name etched in gold on the dean's list. That achievement, like so many others, went unnoticed by my family, but it opened doors to Meridian Partners, a boutique investment firm specializing in industrial turnarounds. There, I carved a reputation as a strategist who could spot value in crumbling companies, orchestrating deals that saved jobs and restored balance sheets. By 30, I was managing portfolios worth tens of millions of dollars. My office on the 35th floor of a downtown tower offering panoramic views of Lake Michigan's restless waves. Yet, no matter how high I climbed, the weight of my family's indifference pressed against me, a silent reminder of the gap between who I was and who they wanted me to be. Family gatherings at our North Shore home were a ritual of exclusion. I'd arrive at the 5 square foot colonial, clutching a bottle of Cabernet as armor, only to watch Dad introduce David as my son, the future of Johnson Industries, his voice swelling with pride. I was Camilla, my daughter. The words flat, as if my existence needed no elaboration. I stopped sharing my successes, promotions, deals closed. Industry awards because they dissolved in the face of Dad's disinterest. Once, at a Christmas party doubling as a networking event, I overheard him tell a colleague, "Women in banking. They'll chew her up in 5 years." I was 28, already outlasting his prediction, but the sting of his words lingered. David, too, played his part, his fraternal affection laced with condescension. "How's life moving papers around?" Mila, he'd tease, clapping my shoulder as if I were a child playing at business. I'd force a smile, swallow my retort, and sip my wine. My 200 square foot downtown apartment calling me back to a world where I was seen. By 2018, the financial crisis rippled through manufacturing, and whispers reached me not from family, but from industry contacts that Johnson Industries was in peril. The company, sprawled across a 200,000 square foot facility, had overextended itself with a $10 million expansion, banking on orders that never materialized. By early 2019, it teetered on bankruptcy, its cash reserves drained, banks refusing loans, and assets poised for a fire sale. I learned this not from Dad, who'd rather face ruin than admit vulnerability, nor from David, whose pride mirrored our father's. They never called, never sought my expertise. Though saving distressed companies was my daily work, the realization cut deep. Dad would scour every bank in Chicago before asking his daughter for help. His dismissal of my career so absolute, it blinded him to the lifeline I could offer. Sitting in my apartment, the city's lights sprawling beyond my balcony, I grappled with a choice. I could let Johnson Industries collapse, proving Dad's failure, or I could act, not for his approval, but for the legacy I couldn't entirely abandon. The decision crystallized in the quiet of that night, setting a course that would redefine our family's story. I didn't know then how it would unfold, but I knew it began with me stepping into the shadows, wielding the expertise they'd never valued. The decision to save Johnson Industries ignited a quiet fire within me, not born of vengeance, but of a duty I couldn't shake. As if the factory's humming machines still echoed in my bones. In the spring of 2019, I stood before Meridian Partners Investment Committee, my voice steady as I pitched the acquisition of a distressed but salvageable manufacturer. I laid bare my connection to the company, recusing myself from the final vote to ensure impartiality. Yet my argument was relentless. Johnson Industries, with its 200 square foot facility and loyal client base, was undervalued, its potential obscured by mismanaged debt. The committee approved a $15 million infusion, a lifeline disguised as a business deal. and tasked me with overseeing the turnaround. To shield my involvement from my family's pride, I enlisted Alex Chen, my colleague and confidant, as the intermediary, his name the only one they'd know. By June, Dad signed the papers, believing Alex represented faceless investors, never suspecting I held 51% of his life's work. From my 35th floor office, I became the shadow architect of the company's revival, restructuring $8 million in debt, streamlining supplier contracts, and approving upgrades to outdated equipment. Each decision was a delicate balance, preserving the factory's core while fortifying its financial spine. Alex relayed my directives, his calm precision a buffer against Dad's grumbling about spreadsheet-obsessed outsiders. At family gatherings, I sat through their complaints, nodding sympathetically as David lamented investor meddling. My silence a shield for the truth. The irony was sharp. Every modernization they praised, every contract they secured, bore my invisible signature. Over 2 years, the company stabilized, its cash reserves climbing to $5 million, orders flowing again. Yet, the weight of my secret grew heavier with each visit home, where Dad's dismissive nods and David's patronizing smirks reminded me why I'd chosen deception. I hadn't planned to reveal my role, content to let the factory thrive under their illusion of control. But secrets, like fault lines, have a way of cracking under pressure. And mine was about to rupture in the most unexpected setting, a holiday table laden with cranberry sauce and unspoken grudges. Thanksgiving 2024 arrived with a chill that mirrored the tension I carried into my parents' North Shore home. Its 5,000 square foot elegance, a stage for familiar rituals. I clutched a bottle of Pinot Noir, my emotional armor, as Mom's too-tight hug and David's condescending, "How's the paper chase?" Mila set the tone. The dining room, aglow with crystal and silver, hummed with Mom's military precision traditions, turkey carved by Dad, wine poured by David, and me, sipping silently, braced for exclusion. Conversation followed its predictable script, David and Dad dissecting production tweaks, Mom and Caroline chatting about charity galas until Dad cleared his throat over pumpkin pie. His fork set down with deliberate weight. He announced Johnson Industries' turnaround, crediting David's exemplary leadership and unveiling a $20 million buyback plan to reclaim control from the investors. The proposal was reckless, the company's $5 million reserves too thin to shoulder such debt. And I couldn't stay silent. "Is that financially sound?" I asked. My tone neutral but pointed. Dad's eyes narrowed, his voice icy. "Not everything's about numbers." "Camilla, pride matters more than your balance sheets," David piled on, sneering. "Some of us build things, not just analyze them." The dismissal, so casual, so complete, snapped something inside me. Years of swallowed retorts surged forward, and I spoke, my voice low but unyielding. "The company was 3 months from collapse 2 years ago. Why do you think it recovered?" Dad scoffed. "We adapted. Through grit you'd never understand." Shuffling papers downtown. The room stilled, Mom's eyes wide, Caroline's napkins suddenly fascinating. I leaned forward, each word a blade. "I saved Johnson Industries. I'm the investor who bought 51% in 2019. I restructured your debt, approved your upgrades, and made every major decision since." Silence swallowed the table. I pulled a folded document from my purse, sliding it across the mahogany. My signature's at the bottom. "Your buyback, it needs my approval." And it's not happening. Dad's face drained of color. David's jaw hung slack. And I stood, purse in hand, walking out into the November night, the weight of truth both liberating and crushing. In my 200 square foot apartment, the Chicago skyline a silent witness. My phone buzzed with Mom's texts and David's voicemails, but nothing from Dad. I silenced them, pouring a scotch as Alex called. "Your father's livid," he said, his voice steady. "He's consulting attorneys, claims we conspired." I sighed, ice clinking in my glass. "Are we exposed, Alex?" Ever the lawyer turned strategist was firm. "The acquisition's airtight. You disclosed your connection, recused yourself, and followed every protocol. It's just messy now." Messy was an understatement. The next morning, At Meridian's 35th floor office, Lake Michigan, steel gray beyond the windows, I faced Dad, David, and their attorney, James Whitman, Meredith Zhao, our legal counsel, flanked Alex and me, her presence a quiet force. Dad's voice was controlled but venomous. "You hid this. Let us negotiate with our daughter like fools." I met his gaze. "I disclosed everything to the committee. Would you have accepted my help if I'd offered it openly?" "From the daughter who shuffles papers," David interjected. "You lied to us, running the company like a puppet master." I turned to him. "Would you have followed my lead if you knew, be honest?" His silence was answer enough. Meredith confirmed the deal's legality, but Dad demanded a buyback. I shook my head. The company can't afford $20 million in debt. It's recovering, not invincible. I slid a proposal across the table, a 3-year plan for gradual family ownership, tied to financial benchmarks. Review it. I said, standing, but I won't let pride tank what I've rebuilt. Dad's eyes held a flicker of uncertainty, a crack in his armor. As they left, the weight of our fractured legacy hanging heavy in the air, the November air lingered, sharp and unforgiving, as I wrestled with the wreckage of my Thanksgiving confession. Weeks later, a small package arrived at my downtown office, its elegant wrapping betraying no hint of sender. Inside, a silver frame held a photograph from a distant summer me, a wide-eyed girl on Johnson Industries' factory floor, peering at a circuit board as Dad explained its secrets. A note, scrawled on company letterhead, accompanied it. I lost sight of the daughter who asked fearless questions. I'd like to start again. Christmas Eve, 7 p. Ma. Just family. The words, raw and unadorned, pierced the armor I'd built, stirring a cautious hope. I arrived at the North Shore house under a blanket of fresh snow, the 12-foot Christmas tree casting a warm glow. Mom's embrace held a new weight, her voice trembling. "I failed you. Camilla, staying silent while they diminished you." Her apology, unexpected, cracked open a door long sealed. Dinner unfolded with strained civility, the clink of crystal masking deeper currents. David's gaze was guarded, Caroline's measured, but it was Dad who shifted the night's trajectory. "I was wrong," he said, his voice rough with effort. "To box you into my vision of legacy." The admission hung heavy, a bridge across decades of dismissal. David bristled, his resentment spilling out. "You played us." Camilla, pulling strings like a shadow CEO. Caroline, her therapist's insight cutting through, urged honesty. "You're all guarding old wounds, hurting each other to protect them." The table became a confessional. David venting the pressure of being the heir, me unearthing the pain of erasure. Dad proposed a radical shift. "Join us as CFO. Camilla, your financial mind. David's operational grit. My experience were stronger together." The offer was a siren call, promising integration but threatening the independence I'd carved at Meridian. I hesitated. The Chicago skyline's distant pulse, a reminder of my hard-won autonomy. By January 2025, I stepped into Johnson Industries' $200, square-foot facility as CFO, my nameplate gleaming on a sleek office door. The all-hands meeting buzzed with curiosity, Dad's voice carrying a pride I'd never heard as he introduced me. David stood stiffly, his acceptance grudging but present. In our first executive session, I scrutinized an $8 million acquisition, spotting inflated projections that others missed. "We need deeper due diligence," I insisted, my tone firm but collaborative. David's jaw tightened, then relaxed. "Reasonable. I'll delay talks." The moment, small but seismic, marked a new equilibrium, over whiskey in Dad's office. He reflected. "David's adjusting, but it's hard. Sharing a future he thought was his alone." I nodded, catching myself softening opinions to avoid old frictions, yet sensing progress. The factory's hum, once a symbol of exclusion, now felt like a pulse I could shape, a legacy no longer at odds with my truth. Spring 2025 bloomed, softening Chicago's edges, and Johnson Industries flourished under our reshaped leadership. A Sunday dinner at the North Shore house carried a different air. Mom pulling me into her kitchen, her domain once sacrosanct. "Help with the sauce," she said, handing me an apron, her smile a quiet invitation to a bond beyond formality. As I stirred, her stories of burnt dinners and early struggles wove a thread of intimacy I hadn't known I craved. Later, Dad led me to his study, unlocking a drawer to reveal a worn folder. Inside, clippings and awards chronicled my journey, from high school victories to finance monthly profiles. Kept in secret, I was proud, he admitted, but feared you'd outgrow us. He handed me a new company charter, our signatures mine, his David's cementing equal partnership. "This is your legacy, too," he said. The words a balm to old wounds. David raised a whiskey glass at dinner's end, his toast measured but sincere. "To Johnson Industries and family, flaws and all." Our glasses clinked, a fragile harmony. The company secured a $12 million contract, my financial restructuring enabling expansions that David's efficiencies made feasible back in my 200-square-foot apartment, the skyline a glittering testament to my choices. I spread the folder's contents across my table. Each clipping was a piece of me, daughter, sister, executive no longer fractured. The factory's 200-square-foot sprawl, once a cage, now stood as a canvas for integration, where my expertise and family's grit intertwined. Tensions lingered, moments when old patterns surfaced. But we caught them, recalibrating with hard-won awareness. This wasn't perfection, but a beginning, authentic and whole. As I traced the folder's edges, I knew the work of weaving past and future continued. A legacy not just preserved, but reimagined. Stay tuned for more stories like this. And if this moved you, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what's next. In the quiet of my downtown Chicago apartment, with the skyline's glow casting shadows across my dining table, I traced the edges of the folder Dad gave me. Its clippings a map of a journey I hadn't fully understood until now. My story taught me that true strength lies not in proving others wrong, but in building something enduring despite their doubt. I spent years chasing validation, believing my family's dismissal defined my worth, only to learn that their blindness was their own, not a measure of my value. Saving Johnson Industries, revealing my role, and stepping into its leadership wasn't about triumph over Dad or David. It was about honoring the part of me that still believed in our shared legacy. Even when they couldn't see it, I learned to hold my ground, not with anger, but with clarity, letting my work speak where words failed. The 200-square-foot factory, once a symbol of exclusion, became a canvas for integration, where my financial acumen and their operational grit could coexist. Yet, the deeper lesson was in the fragility of reconciliation. Family wounds don't heal overnight, but they mend through persistent, honest effort. I discovered that legacy isn't a static inheritance, but a living process, reshaped by every choice to listen, to forgive, to evolve. As I look out at the city, its pulse a reminder of the life I've built. I realize my greatest achievement wasn't owning the company, but claiming my place in it, whole and unapologetic, trusting that authenticity, not approval, is the foundation of any lasting triumph. What does it feel like to stand in a home you've built from the ashes of betrayal, watching the man who discarded you choke on his arrogance? That's the question I asked myself as I greeted guests at my $2.5 million Oak Ridge Heights estate. The Boston skyline glittering below like a promise kept. My name is Natalie Carter. And 3 years ago, my world crumbled when my husband left me for a woman he deemed richer, more connected, more everything. But on this summer evening in 2024, as I hosted industry titans in my 7-square-foot sanctuary, his stunned expression was worth more than every chandelier in the room. Before I unravel how I got here, tell me, where are you tuning in from? And if this story sparks something in you, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow's tale is one you won't want to miss. The evening was perfection, the kind of warm Boston night where the breeze carries jasmine from my landscaped gardens. My midnight blue gown hugged my frame, sapphire earrings catching the light as I welcomed venture capitalists, fintech journalists, and clients like Catherine Westbrook, CEO of Westbrook Financial. The string quartet played softly by the infinity pool, and the catering staff glided with trays of lobster canapes. My company, Horizon Tech, was celebrating a $110 million Series B valuation and our expansion into London, Frankfurt, and Geneva. Every detail of the night, the soaring ceilings, the curated art, the view screamed a truth I'd fought for. I was no longer the woman Derek Mercer had left behind. Then they arrived. Derek, my ex-husband, and Rachel Winters, his new wife, framed in my grand entrance like actors in a play they hadn't rehearsed. Eleanor Grant, Pinnacle Investments CTO, had invited them, citing Derek's new role as executive VP. Their tailored elegance, his charcoal suit, her champagne gown couldn't mask their shock. Derek's eyes widened at the marble foyer. Rachel's smile froze as she scanned the space, her engagement ring glinting futilely against my home's grandeur. "Welcome," I said, voice steady as Boston Harbor. "Eleanor mentioned you might join us." Derek managed. "Quite a place. Natalie." But his tone betrayed envy. Rachel, recovering, offered. "It's beautiful. More impressive than I expected." I smiled. "It suits this chapter of my life." As guests mingled, I announced our European expansion from a terrace podium, the sunset gilding my words. 3 years ago, Horizon was a spark of determination. Today, we serve 23 financial institutions across continents. Applause rippled. But I caught Derek and Rachel at the crowd's edge, their faces a study in recalibration. Later, Catherine Westbrook pulled me aside, her red pantsuit commanding attention. "Your ex-husband just pitched himself to Westbrook," she said, amused. "He thinks his Pinnacle perspective could help our expansion." I told him loyalty matters more. I nodded, unsurprised by Derek's opportunism. In the kitchen, as I reviewed notes, Derek cornered me. "This house is impressive, Natalie, but a bit much for one person. Don't you think his dig was vintage, diminishing what he couldn't claim?" "It's perfect," I countered. "The guest wing houses my parents, and the office inspires my work." He shifted, conceding. "You've done better than I expected. Horizon's a player." I thanked him, unmoved, and when Rachel joined us, urging him toward my announcement, I excused myself. "Enjoy the seafood on the terrace," I called, leaving them to grapple with a reality they hadn't foreseen. The night closed with Eleanor's praise. "Your home is as thoughtfully designed as your platform." Derek's final congratulations were stiff. Rachel's invitation to their renovated East Wing a desperate grab for equivalence. As their taillights vanished down my driveway, I stood in the doorway, not reveling in revenge, but savoring closure. My estate wasn't just a symbol of wealth. It was proof I'd authored my own story. But to understand that victory, you need the beginning. Stick with me. And let's rewind to where it all started. 3 years before that golden evening, I was Natalie Carter, 38, living what I thought was my best life in a 500-square-foot suburban Boston home. My husband, Derek Mercer, was climbing the ranks at Pinnacle Investments, and I'd traded my tech ambitions for the role of corporate wife. I hosted client dinners, organized charity galas, and kept our home pristine, all to fuel Derek's ascent. "We're a team," he'd say, his arm around me at company functions. And I believed him, foolishly thinking our 15-year marriage was unbreakable. How wrong I was. If this story resonates, don't forget to subscribe, there's more to come. And you won't want to miss it. Our story began in college, where I dreamed of launching a tech startup while Derek aimed for Wall Street. We met in an economics class, my analytical skills outshining his, a fact he found both intimidating and alluring. "Your brain is sexy," he told me on our third date, promising we'd be unstoppable together. Those words haunted me later. As Derek's career soared, our modest apartment gave way to a comfortable home, his salary ballooning while my dreams faded into someday plans. I freelanced occasionally, designing software solutions others took credit for. But Derek dismissed my efforts. "That's nice, honey," he'd say, pivoting to dinner plans with Pinnacle's VP. The first crack appeared at Pinnacle's holiday gala in 2021. I'd spent weeks preparing, memorizing the names of key players Derek needed to impress. My emerald dress chosen to complement his image. In the ladies' room, I overheard two women gossiping. Rachel Winters, the new wealth management director. Gorgeous, single, and eyeing Derek Mercer. Poor Natalie's clueless, picking curtains while he's moving on. I emerged from the stall, forcing a smile as their chatter died. I told myself it was a malicious rumor. Derek wouldn't betray 15 years of shared history, not after all I'd sacrificed. 3 months later, on a rainy Tuesday, the truth surfaced. Sorting mail. I found a receipt for a $5 Zaz diamond bracelet. Dated our anniversary a day Derek had skipped for work emergencies. He'd promised to make it up, but never did. My heart sank. The bracelet wasn't mine. I tucked the receipt away, weaving excuses. Maybe it was for his mother's birthday, or a surprise yet to come. Denial is a powerful shield, but it shattered 2 weeks later. Derek came home at midnight, reeking of perfume I didn't wear. At 2 a.m., his phone lit up with a text. Last night was amazing. Can't wait for Paris next weekend. She still doesn't suspect. I lay frozen, tears soaking my pillow. As Derek mumbled in his sleep, Paris. We'd planned to go together. A dream deferred for his career. Now he was taking Rachel, conspiring to keep me in the dark. Morning brought clarity. Over coffee, I asked, "Who is she?" Derek's hesitation was answer enough. "Her name's Rachel," he admitted, avoiding my gaze. "She's different. Natalie, ambitious. Connected, her family owns half of Boston's financial district." His words sliced through our history, reframing my sacrifices as complacency. "It's not just her money," he added, flushing. "But the Winters name opens doors Pinnacle can't." He wanted a divorce. 3 words ended 15 years. The divorce was a masterclass in cruelty. Derek's prenup, signed in the flush of young love, favored him. Our home was tied to his family's trust, and my freelance income paled against his executive salary, limiting my alimony to a $200 salary settlement. "You'll find a suitable apartment," his lawyer said coolly, as if my life could be neatly boxed. I sat across their polished conference table, steady despite the ache, knowing I'd been outmaneuvered. But my mother's voice echoed, "Always have something they don't know about." Natalie, I'd quietly invested her $50 inheritance, a secret even Derek didn't know. It wasn't much, but it was mine, a lifeline to start anew. As I left our home for the last time, the weight of betrayal settled in. Derek was building a glittering future with Rachel, while I faced an uncertain one. Yet, in that moment, a spark ignited not of anger, but of resolve. If Rachel's ambition could steal my husband, I'd build something to eclipse them both. The journey to my Oak Ridge Heights estate began with that quiet vow. In a city that would soon know my name, the echo of my footsteps in a 900-square-foot Boston apartment felt like a requiem for the life I'd lost. 6 weeks after Derek's calculated exit, I stood among cardboard boxes, the $200 settlement in my account, a fragile bridge to an uncertain future. That first night, curled on a thrift store mattress, I let grief consume me tears for the years I'd poured into a marriage now reduced to legalese, for dreams deferred until they nearly vanished. But as dawn crept through the bare windows, I made a vow I wouldn't just survive. I'd rebuild something unassailable. If this journey stirs you, hit that subscribe button, there's more to come. And your support means the world. My mother's words, "Always have something they don't know about," became my anchor. The $50 inheritance I'd invested in secret secured this modest rental, a foothold when Derek's lawyer had predicted I'd flounder. At 4 a.m., I opened my laptop, the chipped coffee mug beside me a stark contrast to the polished life I'd left. My graduate school business plan, a platform linking freelance tech experts with companies, stared back, a relic of ambition I'd buried. It was time to resurrect it. I dialed Alexandra Chen, my college roommate turned venture capitalist, whose offers to review my ideas I'd deflected for years. "I'm ready," I said when she answered, voice thick with purpose. "About damn time." She replied, Her smile audible. Send it over. I'll tear it apart, but we'll build it better. Alexandra's feedback was merciless, exposing outdated assumptions and timid projections. We spent a marathon weekend in her Back Bay office, fueled by takeout and determination, reshaping the plan into a vision that could disrupt fintech. She suggested Michael Patel, a brilliant developer I'd known in college, as a technical co-founder. His startup had just sold, leaving him restless for a new challenge. I hesitated. Derek's disdain for my tech friends had created distance, but Alexandra insisted. He always said you were the sharpest strategist he knew. I sent the email. And within days, Michael and I were sketching Horizon Tech's framework over coffee in a cramped South End cafe. My apartment became a war room. My kitchen table buried under laptops and whiteboards. Every dollar went to the fledgling company. My life stripped to essentials: a folding chair, a secondhand couch, instant noodles. The $200, $1,000 settlement could sustain me for 2 years if I were frugal. But after that, Horizon had to succeed. I coded late into the night, sharpening skills I'd kept alive through freelance gigs, my fingers dancing over keys as I rebuilt not just a company, but myself. Michael's steady optimism balanced my relentless drive, his belief in our vision a lifeline when doubt crept in. Each step forward felt like reclaiming a piece of the woman I'd been before Derek's world swallowed mine. I wasn't just building a startup. I was forging a future where his betrayal would be a footnote, not a headline. Alexandra's network opened doors, and Michael's technical prowess gave us credibility. But the fire was mine. As I prepared to pitch to investors, I knew this was only the beginning. The road to my Oak Ridge Heights estate, to standing tall before Derek and Rachel, was paved with these quiet, defiant moments of creation. Stay with me. Let's see how that spark became a blaze. The hum of my apartment's overworked air conditioner was the soundtrack to Horizon Tech's birth. A gritty symphony of ambition in Boston's sweltering summer of 2021. My 900-square-foot space, now a makeshift office, buzzed with the energy of 3 undervalued developers I'd hired with the last of my savings. Michael and I worked 18-hour days, fueled by caffeine and a shared conviction that our platform could redefine wealth management. But every milestone came with a fight, and the path to proving myself was littered with obstacles Derek never imagined I'd overcome. If you're rooting for this underdog story, smash that like button and subscribe. There's more triumph ahead. Our first breakthrough came when Alexandra secured $3 million in seed funding from Chen Ventures. Thomas Chen, her boss, saw potential not just in Horizon, but in my intimate knowledge of Pinnacle Investments' inefficiencies, gleaned from years of Derek's dinner table rants. The capital let us lease a small office in Boston's Seaport District, but it came with expectations to deliver a prototype in months, not years. Michael led the technical charge, his code weaving our vision into reality, while I crafted a business strategy that spoke directly to firms like Pinnacle. We were a lean team, sleeping on office couches when deadlines loomed, our takeout containers piling up like battle trophies. Then came the test I didn't expect. An invitation arrived in a gold-embossed envelope: Derek and Rachel's housewarming at their $2 million Lakeview home, a 4-square-foot monument to their new life. My instinct was to shred it, to spare myself their curated happiness, but a deeper urge prevailed, not to compete, but to measure my strength. I RSVP'd, choosing a simple black dress that whispered resilience, not celebration. The curved driveway, lined with luxury cars, felt like a gauntlet, but I walked it with calm resolve. Rachel greeted me, her poised smile faltering at my presence. "How brave of you to come," she said, her eyes scanning for weakness. "Congratulations," I replied, handing her a bottle of artisanal olive oil, a deliberate nod to my frugal focus. I'm saving my resources for bigger investments. Their home was a showroom, polished, impersonal, like a magazine spread. Derek, holding court among Pinnacle colleagues, did a double take when he spotted me. "I didn't think you'd come," he said, his pride in their renovations and East Wing atrium by Rachel's architect barely masking unease. I nodded politely, circulating with ease, deflecting pitying glances from those who saw me as the discarded wife. I left early, not out of pain, but clarity. Their world no longer held me. That night, I poured my energy into Horizon's bid for Pinnacle's wealth management platform, submitted under N. Carter to ensure a fair evaluation. My years of listening to Derek's complaints about Pinnacle's clunky systems gave us an edge no competitor could match. But the startup gods tested us. Our lead developer quit for a tech giant's tripled salary, leaving us shorthanded. Days later, our prototype crashed during a client demo, the screen flickering as my heart sank. Michael and I worked 36 hours straight. Vending machine snacks our only fuel. To rebuild it. Are we crazy? I asked at 3 a.m. Staring at stubborn code, Michael's weary grin steadied me. Probably. But the best companies are built by lunatics who believe. His words reignited my fire, and we pushed on, refining our platform to address Pinnacle's exact pain points, manual processes, outdated client interfaces, inefficient data flows. The bid submission was a gamble. Our team stretched thin, sleeping on office floors as we polished every detail. Alexandra's brutal critiques kept us sharp, her venture capital lens exposing weaknesses we couldn't afford. When we learned Pinnacle had shortlisted us among 12 vendors, elation mixed with dread. The presentation would mean facing Derek, now a senior VP, and Rachel, whose family influence loomed over Pinnacle's board. I refused to let their presence derail me. This wasn't about revenge, it was about proving Horizon's worth. And mine. As we prepared, I felt the weight of those early apartment days. The chipped mug and folding chair, now symbols of a resilience Derek underestimated. The Seaport office, though cramped, hummed with purpose. Our small team united by a vision bigger than any single contract. The road to my two daughters' $5 million estate was being built, not with his money or her connections, but with my grit and my team's belief. Keep following this story next. We face Pinnacle's board, where the stakes climb higher. The glass tower of Pinnacle Investments loomed over Boston's financial district like a monument to Derek's ambition. But as I stepped into its executive suite in early 2022, I wasn't the supportive wife he'd once paraded. I was the CEO of Horizon Tech, poised to claim a $7 million contract that would redefine my company and me. Our platform, painstakingly crafted in those sleepless Seaport nights, had made Pinnacle's shortlist. But the final presentation meant facing Derek and Rachel across a conference table. Their resistance was predictable, and their underestimation was my advantage. If you're invested in this climb, hit that subscribe button. Your support fuels these stories, and there's more to come. Michael and I arrived at Pinnacle's headquarters, our pitch polished to a sheen. The elevator ride to the 30th floor stirred memories of company galas, but Michael's steady hand on mine grounded me. You're not Derek's ex-wife today. He said, you're the leader of Horizon. The conference room was a sleek arena. 8 committee members seated around a polished table. Eleanor Grant, the CTO, at its head. Derek sat at the far end, engrossed in our proposal, unaware of my arrival. Rachel, beside him, her engagement ring an ostentatious spark, froze when she saw me. I'm Natalie Carter, I announced, voice clear as harbor ice, founder and CEO of Horizon Tech, here to show how our platform will transform your operations. Derek's face drained of color, a fleeting vulnerability before his mask returned. Rachel's eyebrows arched, then settled into practiced neutrality. Eleanor welcomed us, praising our proposal's precision. Michael led the technical breakdown, his slides detailing seamless client workflows. While I aligned our solution with Pinnacle's strategic goals, the room engaged thoughtfully. But Derek remained silent, his influence a shadow. Rachel's questions were sharp, probing our startup's stability. Horizon's young, I acknowledged, meeting her gaze, but our team's 7 decades of fintech experience, backed by Chen Ventures' $3 million, ensures longevity. Our 100% client retention outpaces legacy vendors. The hour passed in a blur of data and conviction, but Derek's silence signaled trouble. Days later, Eleanor called. Your solution outperformed competitors, she said, but there's resistance due to past associations. Derek was leveraging our history to block us. Anger flared, but strategy prevailed. I'm surprised Pinnacle would prioritize politics over outcomes, I replied. Eleanor paused. The decision's not final. We'd like you alone for a closed-door meeting tomorrow. The invitation was a gauntlet, a chance to neutralize Derek's influence or falter. I prepared with surgical focus, anticipating every objection. My charcoal suit exuded authority, a blue blouse echoing Pinnacle's branding. In the intimate boardroom, Eleanor, the CFO, the head of client services, and Derek awaited. Mr. Mercer believes your past marriage could complicate collaboration, the CFO said bluntly. Derek stared at the documents, avoiding my eyes. I appreciate the candor, I responded. Our divorce was challenging. But I'm here as Horizon's CEO, not Derek's ex. Your technical evaluation proves our platform's superiority. The question is whether personal history will outweigh client value. Derek cleared his throat. It's about avoiding complications. Other vendors lack our baggage, Eleanor interjected, with inferior solutions. Per our tests. I seized the moment. If Horizon came from a stranger, would you hesitate? Silence answered. I propose Michael handles daily implementation, with me at the executive level. I offered, if concerns arise, you can terminate our contract penalty-free within a year. The CFO nodded, impressed. That's confidence, not concession. The meeting ended with Eleanor's assurance of a swift decision. 3 days later, Horizon won the $7 million contract. Our Seaport office erupted in cheers. Champagne in plastic cups, a toast to grit. Derek's congratulatory text arrived. A hollow gesture I deleted without reply. When Pinnacle offered $27 million to acquire Horizon, I declined, choosing independence over security. The victory wasn't just financial. It was proof I'd outgrown Derek's shadow, but the horizon stretched further, promising growth I could scarcely imagine. Stay with me. Let's see how that vision unfolded. The Boston skyline from my $5 million Oak Ridge Heights estate felt like a canvas of possibility, each light a testament to Horizon's ascent. By mid-2024, our company had become a fintech titan, its billion-dollar valuation marking us as a unicorn. The journey from that Seaport office to this 5-bedroom, 7-bathroom haven on 2 acres was more than financial. It was a reclamation of self, forged through relentless ambition and unexpected alliances. If this story inspires you, click that bell icon to join our journey. There's more to share, and you won't want to miss it. Horizon's growth surged with our $22 million acquisition of Meridian Analytics, whose predictive analytics seamlessly enhanced our platform. The deal brought Westbrook Financial's Pinnacle's rival, into our fold, meeting Catherine Westbrook in her panoramic office. I outlined our integration strategy, and her incisive questions met with my assurance of data isolation. You're not transactional like Derek, she noted, committing to expand our partnership. The acquisition's success fueled our European contracts, but it drew scrutiny. Edward Winters, Rachel's father and a Pinnacle board member, called, his tone veiled with pressure. Serving Westbrook creates conflicts, he said, proposing that Pinnacle acquire Horizon. We declined a similar offer last year. I replied, unwavering. Our independence drives our value. His pause confirmed I'd held my ground. My estate, purchased post-acquisition, became my sanctuary. Its clean lines and warm textures reflecting a life rebuilt on my terms. Furnishing it slowly, I prioritized authenticity over ostentation. The guest wing ready for my parents' visits. Their presence, especially during my father's recovery, grounded my success in family, not just wealth. Professionally, Horizon thrived. Our 140-person team across 3 offices delivering enhanced functionality that analysts deemed impossible. Yet, personal evolution matched these triumphs. Michael, my co-founder, became more than a partner. Late-night strategy sessions turned to dinners where work faded. His candid warmth a contrast to Derek's calculations. We should consider all possibilities, he said one evening, suggesting a shared future, his hand steady in mine. Then, the past resurfaced. News broke of Pinnacle's SEC investigation, and Derek was implicated in accounting fraud to inflate metrics. His suspension was swift. His reputation shattered. Rachel filed for separation, her family's attorneys citing deceit. When Derek called, his voice raw with desperation, he sought a loan, Claiming he'd rebuild. I'm not the person to help, I said, hanging up. The boundary, a final severance of his influence. Eleanor, now Pinnacle's interim CEO, assured me our contract remained secure. Her leadership a bulwark against chaos. Horizon's next chapter took shape with plans for a Boston campus. Its collaborative spaces a testament to our evolution. Michael's proposal to add executive housing hinted at a life intertwined, professional and personal. As I reviewed these designs on my terrace, the sunset painting, the sky in vivid hues, I reflected on the journey. Derek's betrayal had sparked this path, but its richness lay in self-discovery, building a company and home aligned with my values, not his expectations. The validation I'd once sought from his shock at my estate now felt incidental, replaced by the quiet certainty of my purpose. This isn't the end. Horizon's global reach grows, and my story continues. Written on my terms with partners chosen for heart, not advantage. If you followed this far, check out the stories linked below. They're just as gripping. Subscribe and turn on notifications to catch what's next. My estate, my company, my life. They're not just triumphs over a past left behind, but foundations for a future I'm only beginning to imagine. You'd think by 30, I'd have it all figured out my place. A cozy nook in the world. A life built on my terms. But life has a way of tugging you back to places you thought you'd left behind. Like a thread unraveling a sweater you swore you'd never wear again. My name is Sydney, and for a while, I was carving out a quiet, proud existence in a small apartment in an American city, pinching pennies to chase a dream. That dream was a home of my own, a tangible piece of independence. Little did I know, my family, my parents, and my younger sister, Lily, would pull me back into their orbit, testing every ounce of my resolve. This is the story of how I learned who they were and who I could become. 5 years ago, fresh out of college, I leased a one-bedroom apartment in an aging brick building, the kind with creaky floors and radiators that hissed like grumpy cats. It wasn't much, but it was mine, paid for with my entry-level marketing salary. I lived frugally, packing turkey sandwiches for lunch, scouring thrift stores for sweaters, and coaxing my old Honda Civic through another year. Every dollar I didn't spend went into my savings account, a number that grew like a slow-blooming flower, filling me with pride. I'd sit at my wobbly kitchen table, balancing my checkbook, imagining a future where I'd hold the keys to my own house. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough. My sister, Lily, was my opposite. At 24, 6 years younger, she was the golden child in our family's suburban American home. My parents showered her with everything designer clothes, the latest iPhone, a Gucci purse that cost more than my monthly rent. They even let her borrow their sleek SUV whenever she pleased. I'd drive 20 miles every Sunday for family dinners, my Civic rattling, only to watch Lily flaunt her latest treasure. Sydney, check out my new bag, isn't it? Divine, she'd chirp, her eyes glinting with something sharper than excitement. I'd nod, biting back the sting. Knowing I couldn't afford such things, still wearing that sweater from forever ago, she'd tease, glancing at our parents for a laugh. It's practically vintage. Mom and Dad never corrected her. They'd smile, indulgent, or steer the conversation to Lily's school projects or her weekend plans. It was as if her barbs were just playful sibling chatter, not a spotlight on the chasm between us. I tried to shrug it off. My sweater was fine. My life was fine. I had my job, my savings, my small circle of friends who loved movie nights and weekend hikes, but those Sunday dinners planted a quiet unease, like a pebble in my shoe. Lily's entitlement, my parents' silence. It hinted at something I wasn't ready to name. Back then, I thought I could outrun it, keep building my life, keep saving my dollars. I didn't know how soon it would all come crashing down, pulling me back to the house I'd fought so hard to leave. The air felt different that Sunday, heavier, like the moment before a storm breaks. I pulled into my parents' driveway, the familiar crunch of gravel under my tires, expecting the usual Lily's boasts. Mom's pot roast, Dad's stories about golf. But as I stepped into their suburban kitchen, the mood was wrong. Mom's eyes were puffy. Dad stared at his hands. And even Lily was quiet, scrolling her phone without a single smirk. I sat down, my stomach knotting, sensing the weight of unspoken words. That dinner would change everything, yanking me from my hard-won independence back into the heart of my family's chaos. We ate in near silence, the clinking of forks deafening. Finally, Dad cleared his throat, his voice rough. "Sydney, we need to talk." Mom gripped his hand, her knuckles pale. "Your father lost his job last week," she said, her words trembling. "The company downsized, cut his whole department." I set down my fork, my mind racing. "Dad, I'm so sorry, that's awful." He nodded, eyes fixed on the table. Mom twisted her napkin, her voice barely above a whisper. "We don't know how we'll manage. Lily's college tuition starts next month. $10 a year. Then there's the mortgage, $2. Is an odd dollar monthly the car payments? Utilities." Her eyes met mine, pleading, and I felt the question before they asked it. "Sydney," Mom said, tears brimming. "We hate asking this, but we're desperate. Could you move back home? Just for a bit? If you helped with expenses, we could cover Lily's tuition. Keep the house?" The words hit like a punch, stealing my breath. Move back. Give up my apartment, my savings plan. The life I'd built. I looked at Dad's slumped shoulders, Mom's trembling hands, Lily's wide eyes. "How much would you need?" I asked, my voice hollow. Mom calculated quickly. About $1. $800 a month would cover tuition and bills. That was nearly all I saved each month. The heart of my dream, but they were my family, and their desperation was a vice around my heart. "Okay?" I said finally, the word tasting like ash. "I'll give notice on my apartment this week." Mom sobbed, pulling me into a hug. "You're saving us, Sydney. Truly." Dad's eyes softened, just until I'm back on my feet. "Kiddo," even Lily managed to quiet. "Thanks, Sid. I didn't know what I'd do without college." 2 weeks later, I packed my life into boxes and moved back to my childhood bedroom. It wasn't mine anymore. Lily had turned it into a closet for her overflowing wardrobe, and though she'd cleared some space, her clothes still spilled from the shelves. The pale yellow walls and twin bed felt smaller, foreign. I stored most of my furniture, and my apartment key is now just a memory. That first night, lying under my old quilt, I told myself it was temporary. Dad would find work soon, and I'd be back on my own, my savings intact. I clung to that hope, unaware of how deeply my family's needs would entangle me, how their gratitude would curdle into something else entirely. As I drifted to sleep, the weight of $800 a month pressed against my chest, a silent promise that my dreams would have to wait. The first few weeks back in my childhood bedroom were like walking a tightrope, precarious but manageable. Buoyed by my parents' gratitude, Mom would whip up my favorite meatloaf, her way of saying thank you, and Dad would clap my shoulder, calling me their lifeline. I'd lie awake at night, the hum of the suburban street outside my window, telling myself this was just a detour. But as months stretched into a year, then crept toward 2, the warmth in our house cooled, replaced by a creeping frost of entitlement. My $800 monthly transfers, once a lifeline, became an expectation, and the family I'd sacrificed for started to feel like strangers wearing familiar faces. Initially, the routine was bearable. I'd wake to the scent of Mom's coffee, commute to my marketing job, and return to a house alive with small gestures of appreciation. I set up automatic payments to Mom's account, watching my savings stagnate with each $800 withdrawal. It stung, but I reminded myself it was for Lily's college, for the mortgage that kept a roof over their heads. 3 months in, Dad landed a job, and we toasted with cheap sparkling wine, the bubbles sharp with hope. "I'll be back to my old salary soon," he promised, and I dared to imagine my apartment again, but Mom's face tightened. "His new pay is barely half what he made before," she admitted. "We still need you, Sydney." I swallowed my disappointment, nodding. Family first. Always. The shift was gradual, like a tide eroding ashore. Mom stopped making meatloaf, serving Lily's preferred dishes, instead spicy stir-fries, vibrant salads with avocado and feta I didn't care for, my evening baths, My one sanctuary after long work days. Drew complaints. 40 minutes is excessive. Mom snapped one night. Her voice clipped. Water bills aren't free. I cut back to 20. The hot water barely soothing my fraying nerves. Then came the borrowing dad asking for $40 for gas until payday. Mom needing $100 for a salon visit because her card glitched. I handed over the cash, but the dollars never returned, piling up like unspoken debts. Meanwhile, Lily's closet bloomed with excess $200 sneakers, a sleek smartwatch, a designer backpack that mocked my thrift store purse. I started noticing things receipts in the laundry from steakhouses I couldn't afford. Lily's new MacBook for school, a camera for her photography class that cost more than my monthly contribution. Where's the money coming from? I asked her once, my voice sharp with suspicion. She rolled her eyes, tossing her hair. None of your business. Just because you live like a pauper doesn't mean I have to. I should have pushed. But I let it slide. A mistake that festered. The breaking point came one Friday, after a grueling week at work. Exhausted, I walked in to find Lily beaming, her voice bright with demand. I need $700 for a beach trip with friends, she announced. As if I were an ATM, I laughed. Incredulous. I'm paying $1, $800 a month to keep this house running. I don't have cash for your vacations. Her face soured. You're so selfish. She spat. And something in me snapped. Selfish, I shouted. I work 50 hours a week while you parade around in new shoes. Expecting handouts. Try getting a job like I did in college. Lily's eyes widened, then filled with theatrical tears. Her sobs echoing. Mom and Dad rushed in, their faces a storm of disapproval. How dare you speak to your sister like that? Mom hissed, cradling Lily. You're not the only one making sacrifices. I stared, stunned, as Lily smirked behind her crocodile tears. I'm helping pay for your house, I said, my voice trembling. Dad's eyes narrowed, always throwing money in our faces. That night, I lay in bed, the weight of their words pressing against me. A dawning realization that this wasn't just ingratitude, it was exploitation. And it was only getting worse. The house grew colder after that fight, not in temperature but in spirit, as if my outburst had stripped away a veneer, revealing the raw edges of my family's hearts. I started working late, lingering at my desk to avoid the suffocating tension at home. But the truth gnawed at me. I was a tenant in their eyes, not a daughter. My $1, $800 payments were their entitlement, not my gift. The final blow came in a way I never could have braced for. A betrayal so sharp it carved a new path for my life, one I'd walk alone. It started with a whisper of excitement I wasn't meant to hear. I came home one evening, my purse heavy with exhaustion, and found Mom, Dad, and Lily huddled around the kitchen table, Mom's laptop glowing. Their voices buzzed with plans. Flights, beaches, cocktails. I caught the word Cancun before they fell silent, their eyes darting to me. What's going on, I asked, a flicker of hope sparking. My birthday was a week away. Maybe they were planning something kind. Dad cleared his throat, avoiding my gaze. We're planning a family trip, he said. My heart lifted. For my birthday, that'd be amazing. Lily's laugh cut through. Sharp and mean. Not with you, she said, smirking. Just us three. Cancun. In 2 weeks. The room tilted. You're going to Mexico without me? I asked, my voice cracking. Mom waved a hand. Dismissive. You have work. Dear, we didn't think you'd get time off. You never asked. I shot back, anger rising. And how can you afford an international vacation? I thought money was tight. Lily rolled her eyes. God, Sydney, don't be so dramatic. I deserve this. I've been killing it at school. I stared at her, then at my parents' impassive faces. Deserve it, I said, my voice rising. I've been giving you $1,800 every month for 2 years, and you're planning beach vacations without me. Dad muttered, always keeping score. And Mom clutched her chest. Lower your voice. We won't be guilted by you. I turned and fled to my room, their words a blade in my chest. The truth undeniable, they didn't love me. Not the way I'd loved them. My birthday arrived. A quiet ache. No one mentioned it that morning. No card, no smile. I stopped at a grocery store after work, buying a small chocolate cake. Its happy birthday icing a bittersweet gesture to myself. Maybe we could share a slice, salvage something. But when I walked in, my family sat at the dining table, dressed sharply, a large wrapped box before them. The birthday girl, Mom said, her smile thin. I set the cake down, hopeful despite everything. I got us something sweet, I said. Lily sneered at the store-bought frosting. Dad pushed the box toward me. Your present. Open it. My fingers trembled as I untied the bow, lifting the lid to reveal a sleek, expensive suitcase. Wow, I said, confused. Are we going somewhere? Their laughter was cold, jagged. You sure are, Dad said. Mom leaned forward, her voice steel. Pack your things in this and get out by tomorrow. Lily grinned viciously. I'm turning your room back into my closet. I froze, the air gone from the room. You're kicking me out? I whispered. Dad shrugged. We're tired of your attitude. Throwing your money in our faces? Mom waved a hand. We don't need it anymore. Your father got promoted 6 months ago. The suitcase gleamed. A cruel mockery. They'd lied, taken my money when they didn't need it, and now discarded me. I walked to my room, not crying, but clear-eyed. Seeing them for what they were, that suitcase wasn't a gift, it was my freedom. And I'd never let them take it back. The morning after my family's betrayal, I stood in my childhood bedroom. The suitcase they'd gifted me, now a vessel for my escape. Their laughter from the night before echoed in my mind. But I didn't crumble. Instead, a quiet resolve took root. Like a seedling breaking through concrete, I packed my clothes, books, and the few trinkets I'd kept, each item a step toward reclaiming my life. By dawn, I was gone. An Uber carrying me to a hostel in the heart of the city, my past shrinking in the rearview. That suitcase, meant to mock me, became my liberation, and I vowed to build a future where no one could cast me out again. The hostel was a far cry from home, 4 bunk beds crammed into a room, the air thick with the scent of instant noodles and stranger's cologne. Yet, sitting on my assigned bottom bunk, I felt a rush of freedom, unshackled from my family's expectations. Within a week, I signed a lease on a studio apartment, a shoebox with a single window and a kitchenette barely big enough for a toaster. I furnished it with secondhand finds, a wobbly desk from a flea market, a twin bed with a lumpy mattress, a pair of mismatched chairs, each piece, paid for in dollars I owed no one, felt like a brick in the foundation of my new life. I'd wake to the hum of city traffic, my coffee brewing in a thrift store pot, and smile at the simplicity of it all. At work, I threw myself into my marketing projects, volunteering for late-night campaigns and client pitches. My boss noticed. His praise balmed my bruised confidence. You're on track for a promotion? He hinted, and I began researching first-time homebuyer programs, daring to dream again. My savings, once bled dry by $1, $800 monthly transfers, started to grow. Each dollar a testament to my resilience. I still lived frugally, brown bag lunches. No frivolous splurges, but it was my choice now, not a sacrifice for others. 6 months later, my phone rang, an unknown number piercing my quiet evening. Against my better judgment, I answered, and Mom's voice slithered through, saccharine and calculated. We're in trouble. Sweetie, she said, claiming Dad had lost his job again. Their house teetering on foreclosure? Come home. Help us like before. I laughed. The sound sharp and foreign. You kicked me out. Lied about needing my money. I'm done. Her pleas turned to protests. We're family, but I hung up, blocking her number, then Dad's, then Lily's. They tried everything. Emails dripping with guilt, texts from burner numbers. A handwritten letter slipped under my door, its presence chilling. I ignored them. My heart hardened against their manipulations. Then came a new threat, an email from a lawyer, demanding $24 dollars for room and board during my 2 years with them. My stomach churned. But a friend from college, James, now a lawyer, stepped in, over coffee. He read the letter and grinned. They're bluffing, he said, drafting a response that laid bare my $43, $200 in contributions, threatening a counterclaim for emotional damages. 3 days later, the lawyer backed off, and the harassment stopped. My family's last grasp at control was severed. As I stood in my tiny apartment, the city skyline a faint glow beyond my window, I realized I wasn't just free, I was unbreakable. A year after I left my family's house, I stood in a small townhouse, the scent of fresh paint mingling with the jangle of keys in my hand. I'd put down a deposit through a first-time homebuyer program, my signature on the paperwork a quiet triumph. It wasn't my dream home, not yet, but it was a foothold, a place no one could take from me. My life had bloomed in ways I hadn't dared hope, each step a defiance of the pain I'd carried. The wounds from my family's betrayal hadn't vanished, but they'd scarred over, proof of my strength rather than my breaking. My days were full, purposeful. At work, another promotion came, and my office now has a corner desk with a view of the city's pulse. I'd started dating a kind man who laughed at my thrift store finds and shared my love for late-night diner runs. Our meals paid in dollars earned on my terms. My savings account flourished, no longer drained by my family's greed. And I treated myself to small joys, a new bookshelf, a weekend hike, a latte without guilt. Yet, in quiet moments, I'd trace the edges of what I'd lost. Not just a family, but the belief they'd ever truly seen me. That ache was softer now, overshadowed by the self-respect I'd forged, a flame no one could dim. Word of my family's struggles reached me through a cousin's hesitant call. Dad still hadn't found work, and their second car was sold for a few $1,000s to cover Lily's final tuition. Creditors hounded them, the threat of foreclosure looming like a storm cloud. Once, that news would have sent me running, my loyalty outweighing their cruelty. Now, I felt only a distant sorrow, like reading about strangers in a newspaper. They'd chosen to treat me as a resource, not a daughter, and I'd chosen to let their consequences be theirs alone. I blocked the cousin's number, unwilling to be pulled back into their orbit. My boundaries as firm as the walls of my new home, as I sit in my townhouse, a secondhand lamp casting a warm glow. I think about freedom not just from my family, but from the version of myself who believed love meant sacrifice without reciprocation. I'd given them years, dollars, pieces of my dreams, and they'd offered only a suitcase and a door slammed shut. But that suitcase carried me here, to a life where I know my worth. I'll build more, maybe a bigger home, maybe a family of my choosing, but I'll do it on my terms, with people who see me, not what I can give. My family's struggles are a faint echo, their voices silenced by my choice to walk away, for the first time. I'm not running from them or toward a dream I can't yet touch. I'm standing still, rooted in the certainty that I'm enough, and no one, blood or not, will ever make me doubt that again. What does it feel like to have your world tilt in a single moment, as if the ground beneath you has vanished? That's what I felt, standing in a Seattle hotel room, my phone trembling in my hand, the banking app glaring back with a number that didn't make sense. I'm Alice Moore, 28, single, and supposedly secure with a high-paying job. Yesterday was my younger brother Ted's wedding, a blur of joy and champagne. But this morning, as I prepared to settle the hotel bill, I discovered something that turned my stomach to ice. $8, $400 was gone from my account. How does that happen? Who could do this? The answer, I'd soon learn, would shatter everything I thought I knew about family. It was a crisp May morning, the kind that promises a fresh start. Ian, my boyfriend and a lawyer with a knack for calm in chaos, was packing our bags. I opened my banking app to pay the hotel, expecting to see over $10, $40, the fruits of my careful saving. Instead, the balance read, warm, $600. My breath caught, a sharp gasp that made Ian turn. Alice, what's wrong? He asked, his voice steady but laced with concern. I could barely speak, pointing at the screen with a trembling finger. My account, $400 is gone. The words felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else's life. Ian took my phone, his brow furrowing as he scrolled through the transaction history. His silence was worse than any words. The screen revealed a series of transfers, all time-stamped last night while I was in the shower. To a credit card under my sister Amelia's name. $4 to an account belonging to her husband, Nicholas. $400 to my mother's account. I stared, my mind blank, unable to process the betrayal. Gone, Ian echoed, his voice low. Someone accessed your account. Alice. His fingers moved swiftly, checking for more details. But the evidence was stark. We need to contact the bank. Now, he said, his tone edged with an anger I rarely heard. I nodded, numb, my heart pounding as if it could outrun the truth. As we descended to the hotel lobby, my phone buzzed. It was my mother. The timing felt like a cruel joke. Alice, thank you for yesterday. She chirped, her voice as warm as ever. Ted was so happy. I swallowed hard, forcing calm. Mom, I need to ask you something. There were thousands transferred from my account last night. Do you know anything about that? A pause, then a bright laugh that chilled me. Oh, that... It was less than I expected. My knees weakened. What do you mean? I whispered. Amelia saw your account had more than we thought, she said. As if discussing the weather, we decided to split it. Nicholas said it's a wedding gift for Ted. You always have money. Alice, I froze. Her words a knife twisting in my chest. Ian's hand gripped mine, his eyes blazing. Mom, that's theft. I managed, my voice trembling. Don't be dramatic. She scoffed. We're family. The call ended, leaving me staring at the phone. The weight of her betrayal sinking in. Ian's voice cut through my daze. Alice, this is a crime. We're not letting this go. I nodded. My world irrevocably changed. The first step toward justice already forming in my mind. The 10-mile drive to my parents' house felt like a journey to another world, each mile heavy with dread and determination. And just hours ago, I learned my family. My flesh and blood stole $8, $400 from my bank account. My mother's casual admission over the phone still echoed in my ears, her laughter a wound that wouldn't close. Ian, my boyfriend, sat beside me, his hand steady on mine, his lawyer's mind already mapping our next move. But I needed answers, not just from my mother, but from my sister Amelia and her husband, Nicholas, whose names were tied to the theft. I needed to see their faces, to understand how they could betray me so easily. We pulled up to my parents' modest home, the familiar porch now a stage for confrontation. Ian squeezed my shoulder. Stay calm. Alice, don't let them pull you under. I nodded, my heart a drumbeat as I knocked. My father opened the door, his face creasing in surprise. Alice, I thought you were headed back to Seattle. I brushed past him. Ian close behind, and strode into the living room. There they were. Amelia, lounging with a smirk. Nicholas, his smile too easy. My mother, sipping tea as if nothing had happened. The air thickened, their chatter falling silent as I stood before them. My voice shaking but resolute. How did you access my account? Amelia shrugged, her nonchalance a slap. In the hotel room? While you were showering? Your password was easy. Alice, you always use the same one. Her words landed like a confession she didn't regret. I felt my cheeks burn, the violation sinking in. Why, I asked, my voice hoarse, barely holding back the flood inside me. Nicholas leaned back on the sofa, his tone infuriatingly casual. Why? Because we needed it. You live this cushy life. No kids, no worries. We've got Harry and Margaret to raise. It's not cheap. His entitlement stung, as if my hard-earned money was theirs to claim. My mother chimed in, her voice soft but cutting. Alice, don't make a fuss. It's just family helping family. Ian stepped forward, his presence a shield. Alice has supported you all for years, he said, his voice controlled but sharp. She bought Harry that $300 tablet for his birthday, Margaret's game console. Isn't that enough? Amelia scoffed, rolling her eyes. That's her duty, isn't it? She's single, no responsibilities. We've got lessons, school fees, real expenses. Nicholas's smile widened, infuriatingly smug. It was just a sliver of your money. Alice, you make plenty. My mind reeled. Memories flashing like a cruel slideshow, Amelia's endless lists of needs for her kids. My mother's guilt trips about being better off. I'd always given in, thinking it was love. Now, I saw it for what it was. Exploitation. I want it back. I said, my voice steady now, cutting through the room, every cent. Right now, Nicholas laughed. A sound that grated my nerves. Impossible. It's gone. Ted's wedding. Some debts. A little shopping. That smartwatch you were showing off, I got one too. My head spun. That watch was a gift from Ian. A symbol of my promotion. Not something I flaunted. My mother sighed. As if I were a child throwing a tantrum. Alice, you always overreact. We're family. Lending and borrowing are natural. Ian's voice was ice. This isn't borrowing. It's theft. My father, still seated, rustled his newspaper. Young lawyer. Don't drag the law into family matters. The dismissal broke something in me. These were the people I'd loved, supported, and trusted. To them, I was just a bank. I turned to Ian, my vision blurring with unshed tears. Let's go. As we reached the door, Amelia called out, her voice dripping with condescension. Don't be so mad. Alice, with your salary, you'll make it back in no time. We needed it more. I spun around, meeting her gaze, not a trace of guilt. Goodbye, I said, my voice cold. Don't contact me again. Outside, I leaned against the car, the weight of their betrayal crushing me. Ian's hand found my back. A silent promise. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a fight I never wanted but couldn't avoid. How do you measure the distance between love and betrayal? Especially when it's your own family drawing the line. The sting of my parents' dismissal and Amelia's smug entitlement clung to me as Ian and I drove away from their house. The Seattle skyline blurring through my unshed tears. My brother Ted's wedding was supposed to be a celebration, but it had become a battlefield. With $400 stolen from my account by those I trusted most. I needed to know where Ted stood, my gentle, newlywed brother, caught in the crossfire of our family's greed. His apartment was our next stop, a chance to find an ally or face another fracture. But the path forward, I'd soon learn, would lead me from heartbreak to a fight for justice I could no longer avoid. Ted's apartment was a cozy mess. Suitcases half-packed for his honeymoon. His tired smile faltered when he saw my face. Alice, what's wrong? I thought you'd left for home. I sat across from him, Ian by my side, and let the truth spill out the missing money. Amelia's confession, Nicholas's arrogance, our mother's complicity. Ted's eyes widened, his hands cradling his head. No way, he muttered, voice thick with disbelief. I knew Amelia and Nicholas were obsessed with money lately, but this... He shook his head as if he could shake off the reality. Ian leaned forward, his tone measured. They claimed it was a wedding gift for you. Ted's face drained of color. I never asked for that. Alice, you have to believe me. His sincerity was a lifeline, and I grasped it, placing a hand on his shoulder. I do, but Ted's next words wavered. What they did was wrong. But please, don't do anything to tear the family apart. The plea stung, echoing our mother's manipulations. I'm not the one breaking us. I said, my voice cold but steady. They stole from me. Ted, he nodded, eyes downcast, torn between loyalty and truth. I'm sorry, he whispered. I wish I'd seen it coming. As we left, Ian's quiet resolve bolstered me. He's conflicted. Alice, but you're not alone. Back at our apartment, Ian returned with a thick file, his expression serious. I spoke to Sonia, a colleague who specializes in financial crimes. He said, spreading documents across the table. This isn't just theft, it's a pattern. And it's more common than you think, especially targeting people like you, single and successful. Sonia arrived later, her sharp eyes softening as she listened to my story. Alice, what they did is a crime, family or not. She said, her voice firm, if a stranger took $400 from Ian, what would you say? I didn't hesitate. Report it to the police. She nodded. Exactly. Family doesn't get a free pass. Her words lit a fire in me, and I began poring over 3 years of bank records. The numbers told a story of exploitation, $15,000 in loans and gifts. Each request laced with sweet words that turned to guilt when I hesitated. A $500 emergency for Amelia's car, $1, $200 for Margaret's dance camp. Pushed by my mother's sighs about my fortune. It wasn't generosity, it was a trap. And I'd fallen in every time. The decision came like a thunderclap. "Ian, I'm reporting this," I said, my voice resolute. We scheduled a meeting with the Financial Crimes Division. And the next day, I sat before Officer Taylor, a woman whose calm demeanor steadied my nerves. I recounted the theft, the confrontation, the years of manipulation. Ian handed over our evidence bank statements, transfer logs, incriminating texts. Taylor's pen moved steadily, her questions precise. "Do you have more records of past transfers?" she asked. I nodded, passing a folder thick with proof. She reviewed it, her expression grave. "This shows unauthorized access, theft, and a clear pattern of financial abuse. Ms. Moore, we'll start a preliminary investigation interviews, evidence collection, possibly account freezes." I exhaled, the weight of action both terrifying and liberating. "You're a victim," Taylor added gently. "Don't blame yourself." As we left, Ian's hand in mine, I felt the first stirrings of power. This wasn't just about $8, $400, it was about reclaiming my life. The fallout came swift and brutal, like a storm I'd unleashed but couldn't control. After reporting the theft to the Financial Crimes Division, my phone became a battlefield, buzzing with messages that clawed at my resolve. Amelia's texts were frantic. "Alice, you reported us. Our accounts might be frozen. How will I pay Harry's tuition?" Nicholas was venomous. "You're ruining my life over a little cash." My mother's cut deepest. The police came. "Alice, the neighbors are talking. Withdraw this now, or your father's heart won't take it." Each word was a dagger, twisting guilt into my resolve. I typed a single reply to all "that's your doing." Then I silenced my phone, my heart racing but unyielding. I'd given them my trust for years. I wouldn't give them my surrender. Days later, I found Amelia outside my apartment, her eyes red, makeup streaked. "Alice," she shouted, her voice a mix of desperation and defiance. I froze, clutching my keys, the Seattle dusk casting long shadows. "Why are you doing this?" "We're family," she cried. I kept my distance, my voice steady despite the tremor inside. "If you want to talk, I'll call Ian." Her scoff was sharp. "That lawyer's got you wrapped around his finger. You used to care about us." The accusation stung, but I saw it for what it was, a ploy. "Caring isn't letting you steal from me," I said, my words cutting through her facade. "You took $8, $400 without a thought for me." She stepped back, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in her eyes. Not just anger. "You've changed," she murmured, almost to herself. "I had to," I replied, turning away, my resolve a shield against her manipulation. Ted's visit came next. His knock tentative, his face etched with worry. "I heard about the police," he said, slumping onto my couch. "Everyone's panicking, especially Amelia. She's scared for the kids." My heart ached for him, caught in this mess. But I held firm. "They're the ones who stole." "Ted, not me," he sighed, staring at the floor. "I know, but it's tearing us apart." His words echoed his plea at his apartment. But I wouldn't bend. "If you're on my side," I said, my voice soft but unyielding, "tell them they owe me an apology. Tell them what they did was wrong." Ted nodded weakly. "I'll try." But they won't listen. As he left, I felt a pang for his struggle. But Ian's voice grounded me. "He's got to choose." "Alice," he said, his hand warm on my shoulder, "you're doing what's right." That night, alone in my apartment, I sifted through old messages, each one a reminder of their tactics. Amelia's, "You're so lucky." Alice, "Before asking for $800, my mother's family helps family when I hesitated. They'd woven guilt into every request, and I'd let it bind me." No more. I closed my laptop, and the click a small victory. The police investigation was moving forward, and with it, my determination, Amelia's fear, my mother's shame, Nicholas's threats, they were consequences, not my burden. Ian joined me, his presence a quiet strength. "You're not alone," he said, echoing his words from days before. I nodded, feeling the shift inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about breaking free from years of exploitation, about standing tall against those who'd used love as a weapon. The fight was far from over, but I was ready. What does justice taste like when it's served against your blood? As I sat in the Seattle courthouse, the air thick with anticipation, I felt the weight of my family's betrayal. $8, $400 stolen, years of exploitation exposed, clashing with the hope of vindication. Amelia's desperate pleas and my mother's shaming texts from days ago still lingered, but I'd chosen to fight, reporting their theft to the Financial Crimes Division. Now, with Ian by my side and Ted's wavering support, I faced the moment of truth. Would the law see what I saw not just a crime, but a betrayal that demanded accountability? The answer would redefine my future. The call from my father came first, his voice heavy with exhaustion. "Alice, why are you doing this?" he asked, recounting the police search that took his computer. The whispers of neighbors. "You're destroying us. Your mother can't sleep." Amelia's hysterical. His words were a final blow, disowning me with a bitter edge. "You're no longer our daughter." I stood frozen, the phone trembling in my hand. But I found my voice. "This is your consequence. Not my fault." The silence that followed was deafening. A severance I hadn't sought but couldn't escape. Ian's hand on mine steadied me, his eyes fierce with conviction. "You're not the villain here," he whispered. And I clung to that truth as we entered the courthouse. Officer Taylor met us. Her update stark. Amelia and Nicholas faced charges for theft and unauthorized access. But my parents, due to insufficient evidence, would only face potential civil liability. The preliminary hearing began, and Ted's testimony shifted the tide. He stood, voice trembling, and revealed their premeditated plan, admitting our parents' complicity in using the wedding as cover. His words, heavy with guilt for his silence, were a turning point. Earning a nod from the judge, a temporary restraining order was issued, and the trial date was set. Weeks later, in the official trial, Amelia and Nicholas pleaded guilty, their faces stiff with resentment. The judge's verdict was clear: 3 years of probation, repayment of $8, $400, $5, $1,000 in damages for emotional distress, and a 5-year restraining order barring contact with me. The aftermath was swift. The court froze Amelia and Nicholas's accounts, seizing assets to enforce the repayment. Nicholas's employer fired him, citing his conviction, and their house teetered on the edge of foreclosure. The mortgage unpaid. My parents, too, faced financial strain, their accounts tangled in the investigation's fallout. As I left the courthouse, I caught Amelia's gaze, anger now mingled with fear, a dawning realization of the cost of their greed. Ian's hand rested on my shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded, a calm settling over me. This wasn't vengeance, it was justice. A line drawn against those who'd seen my kindness as weakness. But the victory was bittersweet. The family I'd loved reduced to strangers by their own choices. The Seattle sunset painted the lake orange, a glow that felt like a promise of renewal after the courtroom's cold clarity. Where my family's theft was laid bare and judged, I stood at a crossroads. The restraining order and financial ruin that followed were their consequences, not mine. Yet the ache of their disownment lingered. Ian, sensing my need for escape, drove us 20 miles to this lakeside haven, where a small table flickered with candlelight. "What's this?" I asked, my heart stirring. "A new beginning," he replied, his smile a beacon. "Here, I'd find not just love, but a family built on respect, a future I could shape." As we savored dinner, Ian knelt, a velvet box in hand. "Alice, you faced betrayal with courage," he said, his voice soft but sure. "You stood up, And I want to stand with you always. Will you marry me? Tears fell, not of sorrow but of hope, washing away the pain of my father's words. Yes, I whispered. The diamond ring, a symbol of a life reclaimed. Days later, an envelope arrived from Marty Davis, Nicholas's cousin. Her letter was a revelation. My stand had inspired her to refuse her family's endless borrowing, reclaiming her boundaries. Your bravery gave me strength, she wrote, and I held the paper close, a spark of purpose igniting within me. Ted's visit came next. His shy grin, a contrast to the courtroom's tension. Congratulations, he said, embracing me. Ian told me. He shared his plan to move to Seattle, to be near me as real family, even if it meant our parents' rejection. I testified because it was right. He said, his eyes resolute. I'm done staying silent. His choice healed a wound I hadn't named, binding us closer. At a restaurant, Ian's parents welcomed me. Estella's words a balm. You're our family now, Alice. We take care of each other. Their warmth, so unlike my mother's manipulations, showed me what family could be. Then, the news broke. A local broadcast, titled The Reality of Financial Crimes Within Families, shared my story anonymously, sparking a wave of messages from strangers. Your courage gave me the strength to say no, one wrote. Another, I reported my brother because of you. My inbox overflowed with gratitude. Each note a reminder that my fight had rippled outward. Marty's second email arrived. Her words profound. Your story is changing lives. Alice, people are learning they don't have to endure abuse in the name of family. I read it twice, the weight of her words settling in my chest like a quiet triumph. That night, I stood on my balcony, the Seattle skyline glittering below. The $8, $400 was a small price for the clarity it brought. I'd lost a family that never truly valued me, but I'd gained so much more: Ian's unwavering love, Ted's loyalty, a community of strangers inspired by my stand. The chains of guilt and obligation, once labeled family, had broken, leaving space for bonds built on mutual respect. As I looked out, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. This wasn't just my story anymore. It was a beacon for others, a testament that justice and self-worth could rise from betrayal's ashes. With Ian and Ted by my side, I was ready to build a new life, one where love meant protection, not exploitation. The crystal wine glasses caught the chandelier's light, casting prisms across my parents' mahogany dining table. But it was the gleam in my sister Emma's eyes that held everyone captive. She raised her hand with the grace of a conductor, silencing the clatter of silverware. And I knew before she even spoke that another spotlight moment was hers. At 35, I'd grown used to fading into the shadows at these family dinners, my fork tracing circles around uneaten mashed potatoes, my achievements buried beneath their relentless praise for Emma. But tonight, something shifted, a quiet spark igniting within me, because I knew a secret they didn't tomorrow. Their world would tilt on its axis. Emma's voice sliced through the room, bright and commanding. Big news, everyone, she said, her highlighted hair catching the light as she tossed it. I've been called for an interview at Sterling Enterprises. My mother gasped, her fork hovering midair, while my father's chest puffed with pride. Sterling Enterprises, the tech titan dominating our city's skyline. Its name whispered in boardrooms and country clubs alike. Senior marketing director. Emma continued, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. They reached out to me specifically. Base salary, $250 plus bonuses. The table erupted in awe. My mother's delight a crescendo of oh. Emma and my father's nod a silent coronation. I stayed silent, my pulse steady, my eyes fixed on the napkin folded in my lap. Isn't that wonderful? My mother gushed, her gaze sliding to me, her smile turning pointed. Olivia, you should ask Emma for advice. Maybe she can help you find something better than my consulting work, which they dismissed as a hobby, unworthy of their gilded expectations, better than the empire I'd built from nothing, brick by invisible brick. While they fawned over Emma's every step, I'm doing fine. Mom, I said, My voice soft but firm. A pebble dropped into their churning sea of judgment. Emma laughed. A sound like breaking glass. Oh, please, Olivia, you can't even get a real job. How long will you pretend your little consulting thing is a career? My father set down his wine glass, his brow furrowing. Emma's right. Olivia, you're 35. It's time to get serious. I gripped my fork, the metal cool against my palm, and thought of the contracts stacked on my desk, the acquisition deals I'd negotiated, the company I'd transformed into a juggernaut. My business is doing well, I began, but Emma cut me off. Her smirk a blade. Business. You work from your apartment and barely make rent. Meanwhile, I'm about to run marketing at Sterling. She turned to our parents, basking in their adoration. The CEO personally requested to interview me. I swallowed a laugh, picturing the resume on my desk. Flagged by HR, another entitled candidate. Your call? Boss, when's the interview? I asked. My tone neutral, a mask I'd perfected over years of their dismissal. Monday morning. Emma replied, smug. It's practically mine. I nodded, rising from my chair. Good luck. I should go to early meeting tomorrow. Emma snickered. What? Did someone buy something from you? My mother sighed, her disappointment a familiar weight. Olivia, when will you stop this independent phase? Your father could have gotten you a proper job years ago. I gathered my coat, my lips curving into a faint smile. You're right. Mom, maybe it's time for a change. They thought I was conceding. They had no idea what awaited them. As I stepped into the cool night air, my car humming toward my penthouse, I felt the spark within me flare. Tomorrow, they'd see me not the daughter they'd dismissed, but the woman who owned their world. The city's skyline glittered beyond my penthouse windows, a constellation of ambition I'd claimed as my own. Yet as I stood in my home office, surrounded by framed magazine covers heralding my success, I felt the sting of my family's blindness. I'd built Sterling Enterprises into a tech empire, but to my parents and Emma, I was still the daughter scribbling dreams in the margins, unworthy of their notice. Tonight's dinner had carved that truth deeper, their words like chisels against my resolve. Yet as I traced the edge of Emma's resume on my desk, I saw not just her arrogance, but the path that had led me here, a path of quiet defiance they'd never understand. I sank into my leather chair, the room's silence broken only by the hum of the city 50 feet below. Emma's resume was impressive on paper, Ivy League degree. Steady corporate climb, glowing references. But I knew the truth projects she'd claimed but barely touched. Colleagues she'd undermined. Credit she'd stolen. My phone buzzed, her text flashing across the screen. You should visit Sterling sometime. See a real company. I'll give you a tour after I get the job. I smiled, imagining her striding past my corner office, oblivious to the nameplate reading Olivia Bennett. CEO, another message followed. This one from my mother, darling. Don't feel discouraged by Emma's success. Let your father make some calls. I set the phone down, my gaze drifting to the wall, where Forbes proclaimed me tech's unseen power player. 13 years ago, at 22, I'd graduated with an MBA, my head brimming with strategies while Emma basked in her undergraduate glory, the family's golden child. When I announced my consulting firm, they laughed, calling it a phase. My first major client, a struggling startup I turned profitable. They dismissed as luck. Each acquisition, each company I revived, went unnoticed, overshadowed by Emma's promotions, her polished image. 5 years ago, at 30, I made my boldest move, acquiring Sterling Enterprises through a web of shell companies. My mother's maiden name, Bennett, shielding my identity. The previous CEO, ready to retire, saw my vision. I saw a canvas. I rebuilt Sterling from a faltering giant into a beacon of innovation. My name in business headlines my family never read. I leaned back, my fingers brushing a photo of my grandfather, the only one who'd believed in me. You'll build something big. Live, he'd said, his voice rough with certainty. He'd died before I proved him right, but his faith had anchored me through every slight, every dinner where my parents' eyes slid past me to Emma's glow. I thought of high school, when Emma took credit for my science project. her trophy gleaming while I stood in the wings. In college, when she spread rumors I'd dropped out. Too busy building my first client base to care. Each memory fueled me. Not with bitterness, but with purpose to build something so undeniable they'd have to see me. Emma's resume stared back. A monument to her deceit. I'd done my homework. Her 200% revenue increase was a 30% departmental gain. Driven by a junior team she'd sidelined. Her references, when pressed, revealed complaints of bullying, ideas stolen, and corners cut. She'd built a career on mirrors, reflecting brilliance she didn't possess. I closed the file. My reflection in the window, sharp and unfamiliar, not the timid girl they saw, but a woman who commanded boardrooms. Tomorrow, Emma would walk into my office, expecting a coronation. Instead, she'd face a reckoning. As I turned off the light, the city's pulse echoed my own. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth. And truth, I'd learned, was the sharpest blade of all. The city's heartbeat thrummed through my penthouse walls, a rhythm that matched the quiet anticipation coiling within me as I sat at my desk. The glow of my laptop casting shadows across the room. Emma's smug text from last night lingered in my mind, a taunt that only sharpened my resolve. Tomorrow, she'd stride into Sterling Enterprises, expecting to claim a throne, but I was orchestrating a different scene, one where truth would unravel her carefully woven facade. With a few precise keystrokes, I set the stage for her reckoning, my fingers steady, my heart alight with the clarity of purpose. I opened my email, drafting a message to HR with deliberate care. Schedule Emma Carter's interview in my office at 9:00 a.m. sharp. Ensure she waits in the lobby for at least 30 minutes before being escorted up. A small flourish, perhaps, but after years of enduring her condescension, I allowed myself this touch of theatrics. The lobby, with its walls adorned by magazine covers celebrating my leadership, would be her first test, a chance to see what she'd missed all these years. I pictured her pacing, oblivious to my face, gazing down from Fortune and Business Weekly, her arrogance blinding her to the empire I'd built. Next, I pulled up Sterling's latest quarterly reports. The numbers a testament to the vision I'd poured into this company. Revenue up 15%. New patents secured. A merger on the horizon. Each figure a brick in the fortress I'd constructed while my family scoffed. I skimmed the data, my mind already mapping tomorrow's board meeting. But my gaze drifted to the mirror across the room. The woman staring back wore tailored confidence, her posture honed by years of proving herself to those who'd never listened. This wasn't the daughter who shrank at family dinners. This was the CEO who moved markets. I stood, stretching, and walked to the window. The city sprawling 50 feet below like a chessboard I'd mastered. Emma's interview wasn't just about her. It was about every moment my parents had dismissed me, every barb they'd let slide. I'd spent years preparing for this, not just for Sterling's success, but for the day I'd stand unapologetically in my power. I returned to my desk, saving the reports, and typed a final note to my assistant. Diana ensures security cameras in the lobby and elevator are recording. I want this moment preserved. It wasn't vindictiveness, it was documentation. A record of the instant my family's illusions shattered. As I powered down my laptop, the quiet of my office felt electric, charged with the weight of what was coming. Tomorrow, I'd step into my role not just as Sterling's leader, but as the woman who'd turned their doubt into her dominion. I glanced at my grandfather's photo, his eyes steady with the faith that had carried me here. The stage was set, the players in place. All that remained was the curtain's rise. Morning light poured through the glass walls of my private elevator, the city waking in a haze of ambition as I ascended to Sterling's top floor, 60 stories above the streets I'd conquered. My Armani suit hugged my frame, each step of my heels on the marble floor a deliberate echo of authority. Today wasn't just another Monday. It was the unveiling of a truth my family had spent years ignoring. Emma. My parents, they'd mocked me as a failure. But in my office, with the weight of Sterling's empire behind me, they'd faced the woman I'd become. And I relished the tremor of anticipation in my veins. Diana greeted me at the elevator, her knowing smile a quiet ally. Good morning, Miss Bennett. Your 9:00 a.m. appointment arrived early. She's been in the lobby for 20 minutes. insisting the CEO requested her personally. I checked my watch, 8:45 AA, and nodded. Let her wait another 10 minutes. How's she holding up? Diana's eyes sparkled. 3 coffee demands, several name drops of executives she claims to know, and a comment to the receptionist that her sister's a nobody with no real job. I set my briefcase on my desk, a faint smile tugging at my lips. Perfect. Has she noticed the magazine covers? Diana smirked, too busy preaching her marketing genius to look up. I adjusted the nameplate on my desk, Olivia Bennett, CEO, and glanced at the lobby's security feed on my monitor. Emma paced, her flashy suit a touch too loud, her gestures animated as she lectured the receptionist. Above her, my face graced the cover of Forbes, a silent sentinel she'd never see, typical Emma, so consumed by her narrative. She missed the truth staring her down. At precisely 9:00 AM, my phone buzzed. Ms. Carter is here, Diana announced. Send her in, I replied, settling into my chair, the city's skyline framing me like a crown. The door swung open, and Emma strode in, her confidence a polished veneer. Then she saw me. Her steps faltered, her face draining of color. Olivia, she stammered, frozen in the doorway. What are you doing here? I gestured to the chair across my desk, my voice smooth as silk. Good morning. Emma, please, sit. We have much to discuss about your application. She didn't move, her mouth gaping. I'm supposed to meet the CEO. Olivia Bennett. I leaned back, pointing to my nameplate. That would be me, though I'm not surprised you didn't connect the dots. You never paid attention to my work. Her knees buckled as she sank into the chair, her composure fracturing. This is impossible, she whispered. You're just a consultant, working from your apartment. I opened her file, my tone unwavering. I own this building and several others. Sterling Enterprises has been mine for 5 years. Now, about your resume, some of these achievements raise questions. I slid a document across the desk. You claim a 200% revenue increase at your last company. Their annual report shows 30%. Driven by a junior team's campaign you initially rejected but later claimed. Emma's face flushed, her voice trembling. That's accurate in context. I raised an eyebrow. Is it your colleagues say otherwise? My phone buzzed again. Diana's voice crackled through. Miss Bennett, your parents are in the lobby, demanding to see you. Emma's eyes widened. She'd texted them. No doubt. Send them up, I said. My gaze locked on her. It's time for a family reunion. Emma shifted, her voice pleading. Olivia, about last night. Everything I said, I cut her off. My tone ice. Save it. I'm not interested in apologies born of panic. The door burst open, my parents storming in, their faces a storm of confusion and indignation. Olivia, what is this nonsense? My mother snapped. Why are you in the CEO's office? I stood, pressing a button on my desk. The wall of windows shifted into a screen, Sterling's financial ascent blazing across it, billions in acquisitions, market dominance, my name in headlines. Welcome to my company, I said, my voice steady. The one Emma's been desperate to join. The one you've dismissed while praising her mediocrity? My father's face reddened. Stop this. Olivia, you're embarrassing us. I stepped forward, my presence filling the room. No. Dad, for once, you'll listen. I turned to Emma, holding up her file. Falsified achievements, stolen credit, bullying complaints. Did you think Sterling wouldn't vet you? Her tears fell, raw and uncalculated, as my parents' pride crumbled. Harold, my chief legal officer, entered, his glasses glinting. Harold, explain the consequences of fraudulent applications, I said. He nodded. Falsifying executive credentials warrants rejection and potential legal action, including employer claims for damages. My mother's hand flew to her chest. Olivia, think of our reputation. I shook my head. Like you thought of mine. All those years you let Emma belittle me. I turned to Emma. My decision final. Your application is rejected. Our findings go to your employer. They deserve to know who they've trusted. The room fell silent, their world upended. And I stood unwavering, the architect of their awakening. The air in my office hung heavy, charged with the wreckage of my family's illusions. As Emma's tears streaked her mascara and my parents stood frozen, their indignation crumbling beneath the weight of Sterling's towering financial charts glowing on the screen behind me. I'd unveiled the empire I'd built, not to revel in their shock, but to demand the accountability they'd never afforded me. As I stood behind my desk, the city's pulse thrumming 60 stories below, I felt not triumph, but a quiet necessity. This wasn't about breaking them. It was about building a truth they could no longer ignore. I turned to Emma, her sobs jagged, and held up the folder Diana had delivered, its pages brimming with evidence of her deceit. "This," I said, my voice steady as granite, "details your history falsified reports, ideas lifted from subordinates, complaints of workplace intimidation swept under the rug by father's lawyers." Her eyes widened, a flicker of denial snuffed out by my gaze. "Sterling's standards are uncompromising. We don't reward image over substance." My father stepped forward, his negotiator's mask slipping. "Surely, we can resolve this privately, as family." I met his stare, unflinching. "Family? Where was that when you sat silently as Emma mocked my work? Or when you offered to fix my career with your connections?" My mother clutched her purse, her voice trembling. "You're destroying us. Olivia, think of what people will say." I shook my head, the sting of her words dulled by years of practice. "You built your reputation on praising Emma's lies while dismissing my truth. Now you face the consequences." I nodded to Harold, who adjusted his glasses with measured calm. "Ms. Carter's application is not only rejected," he said, "but our findings will be forwarded to her current employer for review, given the severity of her misrepresentations." Emma's cry was raw, her hands covering her face. "You can't do this." She choked. "Can't I?" I replied softly, "Protect my company, uphold its integrity. Or is it that you expected special treatment because we share blood?" I pressed a button on my desk, signaling the end. "Harold, please escort them out." My parents hesitated, their pride in tatters. But Emma's collapse was complete, her tears no longer a performance but a reckoning. As they moved toward the door, my mother turned, her eyes pleading, "We're still family. Olivia, we can fix this." I picked up a report, my voice cool. "Family requires respect, something you've never offered. Now, I have a board meeting to prepare." Harold guided them into the elevator, their silhouettes fading as the doors closed, leaving a silence that felt both hollow and liberating. Diana slipped into the room, a cup of coffee in hand, her expression soft. "Are you okay?" she asked, setting the mug on my desk. I opened a drawer, my fingers brushing the photo of my grandfather, his steady gaze a reminder of the belief that had anchored me. "You know, Diana," I said, my voice catching, "I think I am. For the first time, I feel free." I looked out at the city, its spires glinting in the morning sun, and realized the weight of their dismissal had lifted. I'd held them accountable, not for revenge, but for the clarity I'd earned. The board meeting loomed, Sterling's future beckoning, and I stepped into it unburdened, ready to lead with the strength they'd never seen. 6 months later, the city's rhythm had shifted, its pulse carrying whispers of my family's fall and my quiet ascent. Emma's employer launched a probe into her record. Her resignation was swift and unceremonious, forcing her into an entry-level role where no name carried weight. A handwritten letter arrived, her words raw with lessons learned. "I see now what real achievement means. Earned, not stolen." My parents, once fixtures on society pages, faded from view, their influence dimmed by the scandal of their misjudgment. My mother's letter followed, a tentative plea to know the woman I'd become, not the daughter they'd overlooked. I kept both letters in my desk, beside my grandfather's photo, not as tokens of forgiveness, but as reminders of a truth I'd carved from their doubt success isn't about their applause. 1 year after that fateful morning, I sat in my office, the skyline a testament to Sterling's growth. Diana entered, a magazine in hand, its cover proclaiming me Sterling's CEO, the power of quiet success. The article celebrated our innovations, our impact, not the drama of family betrayal. I traced the headline, my heart steady with purpose. They'd called me worthless, but I'd built something enduring, not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. That was the victory that mattered.